Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I have a special guest today. I have Matt Strackbein with me from The Letter Hack. He is a leftist YouTuber, podcaster. He has just had on a plethora of media figures and leftists that you would all know and enjoy, people that I love and look up to and admire. So, welcome, Matt. Happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, my pleasure. I was excited to have this conversation with you. So, for everybody watching, I was on Matt's show recently, and I asked him to come on because there's a topic that I wanted to talk about, and just coincidentally, we had a I think it was a New York Times article that came out recently that kind of hit on this topic. So we'll talk about that as well. But my question is for you, Matt. Why do you think that it's? I have my own theory, and I want to run it by you. But why do you think the left has had such a difficult time cultivating the same type of ecosystem, ecosphere, um, media ecosystem that the right has seemed to just take off with? What's your theory on that, and what do you think we can do to
I,
change it?
y- you know, First of all, you're right. The right has built up something very strong. I don't think that translates to factual or honest, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that could be a big part of it, but that doesn't mean that the left version of that shouldn't stand up to it, while also maintaining any kind of principles and values that we hold dear to our movement. Um, there are a number of factors. I think I can get them down to like the top three or four. Funding is a massive one. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of funding on the right, whether they look independent or seemingly broadcasting from their house, have headphones like this, have a microphone like this that all podcasters use. It's not always the case that they are truly independent. Whereas, you see them on YouTube right next to actual independent podcasters and live streamers, and you would just assume they're independent when that's not always the case. You look at Russian-based tenant media, and they were
Mm-hmm.
giving hundreds of thousands of dollars to people for a 30-minute video,
Yeah.
surely to echo talking points, right?
Yep.
And then there's the algorithm. The algorithm is it thrives on drama and controversy, what I call red meat. You and I want the news to be informational and educational. We want people to benefit from this. We're not just
Right.
serving up red meat and dessert. We want people to eat their veggies. So, in terms of the algorithm, just one example, look at how the right wing will weaponize pop culture. They will latch on to something like casting in a Disney movie, and they'll
Mm-hmm.
say, oh, it's DEI or it's woke, just because it's pro diversity or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And they will essentially grab something that's already in the algorithm, Disney movie, for example, that's very popular with everyone,
Mm-hmm.
and they will criticize it in a way that keeps their criticism and their video in the algorithm. And then the left will criticize that video, which only keeps them in the algorithm. Now, the hope is
Yeah.
when you look them up, you will see someone on the left criticizing someone on the right, and you'll get the picture, right? You'll see what's really going on. But if 10 different people on the left criticize one video from someone on the right who's already in the algorithm, commenting on something in the algorithm, whether it's fair or not, that keeps it in the algorithm. That keeps it in front of people. And there's a chance that people aren't going to click on all this stuff and really look at it. They just see the one person's name, whether it's Steven Crowder or Ben Shapiro or something like that.
Right.
And then that just the perception alone can be enough to keep them essentially being promoted without really having to do any promotion. But then,
Yeah.
you know, there's also the question of sincerity. Like there, you hear about people on the left who got into the business seemingly for learning how to monetize. and how to acquire clicks and views in order to monetize. And then they realize that there's more money to be made, just being frank, on the right than there is on the left,
Yeah.
where we're, trying to get people to eat their veggies, which is kind of boring as far as the algorithm goes. And so you have this phenomena of people leaving the left. And you'll notice no one
Mhm.
ever leaves the right. No one leaves the right to come left.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah. Because the
another thing.
money's too good.
Right, and it makes it really difficult
Yeah.
to know who to trust, and it makes it difficult to support each other. Whereas Donald Trump Jr. has been written about in mainstream publications as being a hub for right-wing media. And what that means is anyone echoing what he's saying or what his father is saying about, anything, immigration, doesn't matter what, they will promote that and essentially
Hmm.
turn these folks into guard dogs. And so the perception there is that there's a whole bunch of people on the right that are building up like a media outlet when in reality they're trolls who just happen to fire up a webcam and a mic and they respond pretty promptly to anything that Don Jr. talks to them about. So there's all these like levels of support that on the right and solidarity, which are actually just creating an echo chamber. And we don't
Hmm.
do that on the left. And we don't do things on the left like allow for people to be extremists. And Alex Jones or Tucker Carlson would
Hmm.
never stand a chance on our side because we would hold them accountable. That's looked at as having purity test or cannibalizing our own, and it's not. It's simply sticking to our values at all costs and not allowing people to bend the facts or become so extreme that they lose the more valuable narrative. So those are the things that I think really sort of stand against us. But again, it's not an excuse for giving up or laying down.
Hmm.
And that's really just the independent side of things. That has nothing to do with the more mainstream live streamers or actual like mainstream media. That's a whole different can of worms. But just in terms of like being online, it's very easy to have the perception that the right is doing something correct, where they're just playing the game, and
Right.
that the left is failing when in fact they're not failing. They just aren't willing to play the game in the exact same way, and they have actual values, and that doesn't work as easily online.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely agree with that. I was thinking about the funding piece as well, that the left wouldn't be interested in taking money as the right does, because we don't want to be told what to say, how to act, what subjects are on and off limits, Um, I often think that that's why, certain shows don't take off and others do, because some toe the party line, and true leftists, true progressives are like, no, I'm going to call out both sides if it's warranted. If the left is not acting correct, or democratic lawmakers in particular, if they do something wrong, I'm going to say it. I'm going to be honest about it. um
That's
uh,
true. I'll go so far as to say that I don't even think the Democratic Party represents the left, whereas the Republicans
mm,
represent the right. It's
yeah.
that's what I mean. There appears to be unity over there where they're just attempting to flood the zone at all costs. Now, that
Hmm.
may be a good tactic, but it's a full-time policy on the right. Everyone has to be aligned all the time, no matter how false a narrative may be, no matter how
Right.
extreme a narrative may be. It
Yeah.
doesn't always work. They are the Daily Wire is losing funding. They're doing layoffs. Um,
Mm.
their their female Ben Shapiro clone, Brett Cooper, has broken out on her own. She's doing her own thing. Alex Jones isn't as great as he was before,
Yeah.
after his lawsuit and being sued. Uh,
Hmm.
Steven Crowder doesn't have the same reputation anymore, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't
Well,
underestimate their ability to bounce back. That's for sure.
emotional abuse of your spouse will do that
Yeah.
sometimes.
Right. Yeah. And, getting it on tape, that doesn't help him either. So
Yeah.
we'll take
Yeah.
it. But the
Which,
left is
I'm
also,
kind of shocked, to be honest, that
yeah.
his audience actually cared.
Yeah. Well, it just goes to show if you stick to your principles, there may be a chance to exploit those fractures. I wouldn't set out to win over Steven Crowder's audience. I would
Hmm.
set out to exploit Steven Crowder, though.
Hmm.
And so, whereas I don't personally spend a lot of time criticizing things that they say on the right, I'd rather just stick to the things that matter.
Hmm.
I would take the opportunity to exploit somebody who has revealed their true nature and
Yeah.
shown what's really going on and provided evidence on their own that they're hypocrites.
Yeah. And I think that was the big piece of it with him, is that he, pretends to be this moral, godly type person. Um, you know, and yeah, he just showed himself to be a piece of shit, to be to put it plainly.
Yeah,
And
it's
then all the stories that came out too from his staff of all the freaky weird things that
oh
he would
yeah.
do with them. And yeah.
Yeah, that's not good. Okay, so number one, you can say, hey, we don't do that over here on the left. Come hang out. But there's the unfortunate truth is that they'll just stop watching Steven Crowder and reinvest in Tim Pool,
Right.
right? And
Right.
and they'll lean into it by saying, "Ah, I'll do more Ben Shapiro videos today or
Hmm.
Nick Fuentes, whatever it
Yeah.
may be. Oh, these guys are bigoted. I can watch them and have just as much endorphins going off and have
Hmm.
people continuing to justify my own fears and anxieties and prove that I was right all along. And it's,
Yeah.
my confirmation bias is intact.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of people like that. I think there's also a lot of people who, for lack of a better term, don't like the condescension on the left on certain topics,
Mhm.
which I want to get into that, when we talk about this New York Times article. But my theory, too, I definitely agree with you on the funding. My big theory is that mainstream media has really kind of they've refused, and just pushed against the idea of embracing online personalities on the left.
Right.
You know,
That's
they
true.
they don't share, they don't promote any online shows or any beliefs that we see that are typical on the left. I mean, even with the whole Gaza thing, they're still so reluctant to just call out Netanyahu and call out Israel and say, this is wrong, this is a genocide. He's purposely starving people at this point, has
Children,
targeted
little
children. Yeah.
kids. Yeah.
Would use drones and hover above them where they can clearly see it is a small child and shoot them. And the mainstream media just absolutely shies away from that for whatever reason, whether it's their donors they don't want to upset, or whether it's their I shouldn't say donors, but their advertisers, which are
They're
essentially their donors.
their financial backers are
Yeah.
somebody's donors, I think. That is
Yeah.
true enough. The people who are supporting candidates on both sides are, they have day jobs.
Hmm.
And a lot of them are in media and own media, especially like locally. But you're right that I think some of the most credible journalism, reporting, and commentary about Gaza and Palestine is independent, is
Hmm.
online. And
Yeah.
it's not enough for like MSNBC will occasionally bring on Emma Vigeland now. That's great from the
Oh,
Majority Report. That's
wow,
fantastic,
I
right?
didn't
Yeah.
realize that.
A couple of times so far, I think. Sam
Okay.
Cedar used to go on a lot as well. Um, but they don't do enough of sharing clips from those shows. It would be
Mhm.
so easy to watch 5 minutes of really sincere and factual commentary on what's happening over there
Yeah.
and just, pull 30 seconds of it.
Yeah.
That's not a full-time job for anyone to do. It'd be very
Yeah.
simple actually, and they don't do it, and that's very telling.
Or
Um,
even share, like breaking points. So I know you've had Crystal on
right.
your
Yeah,
show.
crystal ball,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it
And
was
they have done some of the best reporting on what's going on in Gaza, and especially with Ryan Grimm. I mean, he has people on the ground, with his drop site news site now. They have actual reporters, like people in Gaza, Palestinian people in Gaza, reporting for them and bringing them up to date, real time information about what's going on there. And Jeremy Scahill from Drop Site, um, Ryan's partner, he has been in touch with Hamas. I mean, he talks with them and gets their feedback, and I mean, they're so on top of this stuff, and we just don't see it in mainstream media. And I think that's why they've lost a lot of credibility. But again, like I'm excited to hear you say that they've brought Emma Vigeland on
mhm,
MSNBC, because look at what Fox has done. Like they made Tommy Lauren a
right.
host on their show. So the right has fully embraced mainstream media on the right, meaning Fox, has fully embraced the online, ecosphere, you know, ecosystem of media. And so there is that crossover, and you're right, it does get everybody on the same page and talking points. And so if you are on the right, you're not just hearing it on YouTube. You're hearing it on Fox, you're hearing it on Newsmax, you're hearing it on, across the board. And so, when you're repeating something over and over and over, I mean, as we've seen with Donald Trump, and as we know from, Roy Cohn, his mentor, and all other fascists, if you just repeat something enough, then people think, oh, okay, this must be real. This must be true.
Yeah, it's attack, deny, claim victory, repeat.
Yeah.
Don't ever not do that. Those are the three rules of Roy Cohn and now Donald Trump and now right wing media. And if the left really wants thoughtful, sincere commentary and discussion, they would be including more people than just the millionaires that the billionaires have hired to
Yeah.
deliver the news. I can't help but think of Jake Tapper's new book and how he was essentially withholding vital information about Joe Biden for like all this
Yeah.
time with and because he wanted book sales. It's
Yeah.
not good enough for me. I mean, are you I suddenly want to go back and look at all the commentary he had about the various campaigns and Joe Biden himself
Yeah.
and look for criticism there or hypocrisy there and what were his motivations? And so it just creates a level of distrust that
Hmm.
people have more and more because they're not accessible. They're not
Yeah.
seeing themselves in the media. They're working class aren't tuning in to see somebody incredibly polished wearing a suit and tie. One thing I
Hmm.
tell all the guests that come on my show, because I have a lot of people who, it's mutual aid. These are activists. They're not used to being in front of a camera with lighting. And they
Hmm.
go, oh, my microphone's bad. My camera's not good. And I tell them right away, that's good because the audience can see that this is the same as if they were doing it. It's
Hmm.
more accessible. We don't want to be overly polished because that we're not here for that. Yes, we want our message to be as legible as possible. We don't
Hmm.
want it to be garbled audio. We want it to be
Yeah.
clear, but
Yeah.
it doesn't need to be the absolute perfect
Right.
version, which in people's minds is cable news or legacy media. It can be
Hmm.
slightly unpolished because I am slightly unpolished. We are
Hmm.
as human beings. That's how we are.
Right.
We're not putting on a face or putting up a front.
Yeah. People just want authenticity now.
Right.
And I think that was always the case, but I think it's become even more prevalent and crucial since Donald Trump stepped onto the political scene. Because, you know, whether you hate him or you like him, he is entertaining, and I once heard, and this holds true for Donald Trump, that somebody was, I think they were talking about Britney Spears. I can't remember. They were talking about some, mega star. And they were saying that a superstar when you see it because people can't look away.
Hmm.
Whether you like what they're doing or you don't, you want to watch. It's like, train wreck. It's like,
Right.
yeah, it's like a car. It's like you're just drawn to look at it, to see what's going on, what's happening now. And I think Trump has kind of reset our our nervous systems. Like, when Biden got into office, I remember hearing newscasters say, today the president, and immediately, like, I would get this anxiety. I was like, oh my God, and then
Yeah.
I would remind myself, oh no, it's Biden. Okay, he's gone.
Yeah.
But it's
No, but
like,
they've allowed the mascot to become the star player on the team.
mhm,
That's what I think has happened. It's like you go to
yeah,
a
such a
baseball
good
game and you're
point.
like, "Oh, there's the mascot. I love the mascot." Well,
Yeah,
he shouldn't be up to bat. He shouldn't
yeah,
be the guy you're constantly passing the ball to take a three-pointer.
yeah,
That's the mascot. But like they have let the cartoon become the most realistic aspect of what they're about.
yeah.
And that's it's scary, but that's another thing that you won't see on the left. And this is why, and this gets into that New York Times article that you wanted to bring up, but like that's why I think a lot of people I respect on the left and in media on the left are saying we need our own Joe Rogan and
Mm,
even promoting Jon Stewart as a possible presidential candidate in
hmm.
2028. And it's like I don't want to lean into the Republican and Donald Trump's, and MAGA's playbook, if it risks us looking as unserious, and I don't think that's a real word, but lacking
I think it
seriousness.
is.
You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
don't want
yeah,
to lack seriousness in a presidential campaign in the way Donald Trump exemplifies it, and I don't want us to risk a real hero or champion of the people by saying we need a celebrity. I
yeah.
I see what
I,
you're
I,
saying is somebody just has a natural inherent celebrity to them. That's
mm-hmm,
great. I totally get that. You got to bring out the crowd. You got to bring out the
right.
voters. You got to inspire people. But, well, he's funny and serious. Okay. I mean, I don't know if that makes him a good president or a politician even.
Yeah, I see Jon Stewart a little different than, you know, like a left version of Donald Trump, because he is very intelligent. He is very well versed on policy and what's going on in the world, and politics in general. And he is someone who has fought for the first responders
Yep.
repeatedly over, decades now at this point, to make sure that they're taken care of. I mean, I could see, him doing well. I think that
We could
someone
do
like him,
worse. What here's
yeah,
what I
yeah.
here's
But
what
I
I
mean, people
like
were
about
talking
him.
about, like, oh, get The Rock. It's like, what?
Right. Yeah, right.
Seriously? Like,
Right.
I have nothing against The Rock. He seems like a good guy, and like his movies. Don't have a
Well,
problem with him. But as the president, like, what?
right. Yeah.
What? Why? Like, that is so random. It's just so, like, oh, let's go pick, Rosie O'Donnell. I mean,
Exactly.
what is?
There's it using the same logic that somebody applied to electing The Rock. There's a long list of people you could get on board. But what I like about one of the few things I like about choosing someone like Jon Stewart is that he hasn't floated the idea himself.
Yeah,
And
no,
I
he's
don't
very
think,
against it.
yeah, I don't think he wants to do it. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what we need. We need to find the one guy who keeps showing up, or the one person who keeps showing up for the people and
Mm-hmm.
standing up for things that matter and fighting against the current establishment narratives.
Yeah.
And we need to, it's like movements always follow the leader, but it would be great if a movement spawned the leader or like birthed the leader, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
in that way, it's the majority of people and voters saying, "Hey, we pick you to be president." That person says, "I don't want to do it." And we go, "Sorry, we've already got the yard signs and t-shirts underway. You're going to be the candidate."
Yeah.
And they just, it's like maybe you shouldn't be born and bred for this. Maybe it shouldn't be you went to the college and were in the right for fraternity or sorority or whatever
Yeah.
it is. Maybe it isn't that you had meetings with somebody in your teenage years who said you're going to be a judge one day or you're going to be a lawyer
Mm.
and then president. And maybe it shouldn't be that way. Maybe there shouldn't be a direct line. That's fine. But
Yeah.
I do think, like, you know, there's a chance to find politicians who I it's hard to say that a politician would be better at campaigning than somebody who isn't a politician, but I would hate for them to choose somebody who suddenly blended being a celebrity with being a politician. I really want to live in a
Mm.
world where we have a more sincere version and not flashy. But look, I mean, I would vote for
Yeah.
him if that was the, but I'm a little tired of voting against somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be like, finally, I'm voting for somebody that I really, really believe in. Like,
Yeah.
this is the person that we all agreed is the right way, and there were nobody pulling strings behind the scenes. But I would vote for him
Mm-hmm.
if I had to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's just no clear front runner at this point.
Right.
I mean, it's just everybody keeps saying, "Oh, well, the next Democratic nominee or candidate is going to come out of nowhere." And I'm like,
Well, if okay, so if that happened, if we all suddenly woke up one day and we were like, "Oh, everyone's talking about so and so," that'd be great if it was because the party had taken a dramatic shift. And at the moment, the Democratic Party is as good as they're really split between messaging on two things. One, they sort of pick up, not sort of, they pick up the narrative where the Republicans and Trump leave off. And for example, they will say things like, oh, the Democratic Party is for open borders. They're letting everyone in, criminals in the street. It's horrible. And the Democrats will argue that's not true. We're actually pretty strict on immigration. Our policy isn't that bad. And they never shift over to what they do stand for. Instead,
hmm
they stand as not Donald Trump.
yeah,
Not great, not a great, but where's the policy in that? So what I would
yeah,
rather them do is say, okay, what they just said about us being for open borders, that we can easily dismiss that if you look at our record. In the meantime, let me tell you what we do stand for. Starting
hmm
tomorrow, the Democratic Party is 100% about single payer health care, and we are pro union. And that's all you're going to hear out of us because the wrecking ball that is the Republican Party right now, and Elon Musk and Donald Trump, is undoing things in this country that are going to take way longer to rebuild. And
yeah,
if we're going to need your help to do it, and so here's how we're going to do it. And they would transform that party overnight. And now they're fighting for, because when you just argue the narrative that was set and the talking points that were set by the opposition, in this case, Trump, you're sort of just trying to win over his voters for some reason. You're trying to convince
yeah,
people who believe that stuff when it's obviously not true that you're more middle of the road than that extreme. Like, yeah,
yeah,
we are tough on immigration. We're not for open border. Okay, let that go. You
well,
need to win over the 90 million or so people who stayed home in the last election. And then if
yeah,
you do that, surely you will be winning over some of those Republican voters as well. And now you have more than a slight majority. You're like winning because you stand for something.
yeah. You're so right. I mean, they're constantly on the defense instead of offense,
Right.
and they allow the right to shape the narrative. And then they work within those confines, and they keep moving further and further to the right to try to prove that they're not what the right is saying. And it's like, that's not what you need to do. You need to show why being on the left, why leftist policies are actually a good thing, how they help people, and stop, like, cowering in the corner and going, no, I'm not, no, I'm not. I want them to stand up and just punch back,
Yeah.
go on the offense. Like I said, just, when they say you're for open borders, we should say, and you're for, deporting people without any due process and taking
Right.
children away from their parents and then losing them to never be found again.
Right. And
That should be the only answer, is
like
to
they
pivot to what they have done that is wrong.
and the I guess the way they're going to fight fascism and authoritarianism coming to the United States of America is by investing in podcasts
Yeah.
and finding ways to basically just use the exact same playbook as the other guys. I don't know if you want to go into that New York Times article
Yeah,
right
yeah,
now,
let's
but
get into that. And
but
let me
just
set
the
it up,
headline
because
alone.
maybe, my audience may or may not have seen it, but for anybody watching, there was a New York Times article where they talked about how the left, how Democratic establishment, Democratic elites are now asking donors to fund the next Joe Rogan, basically to find the next Joe Rogan for the left. I mean, which to me is pretty funny, because I mean, on so many levels, it just cracks me up. Because you know who the Rogan of the left was?
Mm.
Joe Rogan.
Right.
Like,
That's
Joe
good.
Rogan was on the left. And this is one of my pet peeves with the left. They'll see a clip of someone, and it could be in context, it could be out of context, but they assume that that is the person's entire worldview. They go, oh, or you say one little thing, and they go, oh, I'm done. I'm unsubscribing.
Yeah.
I can't believe you think this. I thought you were this way or that. It's like, no one is going to be 100% lockstep 24/7 in line with what you think
And
and
they
what you
shouldn't be.
feel. I
Yeah.
mean, and what a boring world that would be if everyone agreed with you on every single issue. I mean,
Yeah, if everyone was as left as I am, I would lose the
mhm,
opportunity to keep pulling people left, and I actually like doing that. I like
yeah,
making the case that this country could be further left than the moderates that we have in the Democratic Party or the centrist politics that keep losing elections. I think the fact that the Democratic Party is trying to capture quote unquote digital mojo is really cringe. That's
hmm,
it. I don't like that at all, or that
yeah,
it's being led by strategists and donors.
hmm,
If 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 for
yeah. The same
some
people who brought us Donald Trump twice.
it's the people from the Harris campaign, or like that what
Yeah,
was revealed in Jake Tapper's book. I forget the other guy who co-authored it, but it wasn't just him. But they revealed in the book that Biden's top aide was paid 40 or $4 million
yeah,
for the 2024 campaign. It's like, man, look how that turned out. And that was one guy
yeah.
got
Talk
that.
about failing up.
Right.
I
But
mean,
if they somehow we're going to utilize independent online podcast, right? And they had and these donations were grassroots or from donors, whatever. I You can't convince me that they aren't trying to bring on people who won't criticize the Democratic Party. You will hear criticisms from Fox News where people say, "Oh my gosh, Fox News is criticizing Donald Trump." But and you get that on the left in terms of Democrats too, where it's very safe. It's not even criticism. It's not even
mhm,
like a thoughtful critique. It's
yeah,
just it comes off as like, this is what we suggest you do, or some advice. you can consider it if you want, but we're basically going to let it go now that we've said it out loud. And this
Hmm.
looks as if we're impartial and fair. And that's
Yeah.
not the case.
Yeah.
But there are too many people like myself and yourself who are highly critical of the Democrats in the hopes that there's still a chance for them to course correct and do the right thing
Yeah.
and support issues from the bottom up.
Yeah. I
I,
always
I
explain
don't
it
know.
this way because I have responded to some people who are like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're helping Donald Trump by criticizing the
Right.
Democrats." It's like, no, I love the Democratic Party in theory, like what it stands for, what it's supposed to be. Just as I love my children, doesn't mean I don't tell my children when they're doing something wrong. It doesn't mean I don't try to correct them and go, you know what? You're headed down the wrong road. This is going to
Right.
lead to a bad ending. You're making a mistake. You need to course correct here, because you're going to get yourself in trouble with this. That's what you do when you love someone, when you care about someone. You tell them the truth. You tell them when they're not making good decisions. you know Being part of the Democratic Party doesn't mean like you just blindly go along with everything that they say and do and pretend that it's okay. That makes you blue MAGA. That makes you exactly like Donald Trump supporters who refuse to see anything negative about
That's a
him
great point.
or Republicans.
It's a great point.
So,
And on in the same way that we have to allow for a diversity of thought and opinion on the left, and some people aren't going to be as far left, and some people aren't going to be as center left.
mhm,
We have to have those discussions because in that diversity, we will generate new ideas. But in the same way, we have to be able to be thoughtfully critical of our own side without just outright dismissing them, or
mhm,
not voting at worst, right? Like
yeah,
staying home completely. I personally think electoral politics going forward is a smaller piece of our solutions. There's a lot of labor organizing that can take place that will achieve benefits and policy that Congress drops the ball on in terms of getting significant legislation passed, but it's still important. We shouldn't dismiss it outright. And in that article, they were talking about, I think it was called Project Bullhorn, which is not
yeah,
a symbol of what they're describing. On the one hand, they say they need a sustainable business and they want returns. So they went from saying we have to embrace podcasting because that's what helped Trump win, as if that would convince the people who didn't vote to turn out. I don't see
yeah.
how that works. But I mean, imagine you stayed home on election day and you're like, well, the Democrats didn't do enough podcasting for me. That's silly. It makes no sense. But like,
Well,
not they go from that
let me make
to
the
we
point
need
for that,
return.
because
Okay,
I
go
I
ahead.
do think that there is a point.
I mean,
The
I'm pro podcast.
Yeah, oh, of course, yeah, yeah. I think the reason that was important is because you saw Donald Trump in a different light. Like if all you heard from the
Yes.
media is, "Oh my God, he's, Hitler
Yeah.
2.0, he's so scary, he's so extreme, he's so this, he's so that." And then you see him sitting and just riffing and, shooting the shit for 3 hours with Rogan, and he comes across as, sometimes funny and sometimes, lighthearted, and he's just talking about everyday things and you can find common ground with him. You start to like him. It's like in marketing, they always say the people do business with people who they like, know, and trust.
You know who
And
does that really well too? Bernie Sanders
exactly,
does that very
exactly.
well.
And
Yeah.
Bernie is not afraid. Like he was just on with Andrew Schultz,
Right.
and he sat and yucked it up with them for a while, and they liked him. You could tell like he had good rapport with them, and people got to know him through those mediums even in 2016. People bagged on Bernie. They went off on him for going on Joe Rogan's podcast.
And
And
so instead of saying oh, you guys, we have Bernie Sanders right here. Or instead of saying, maybe we should try some of these progressive policies that we've yet to really, truly, genuinely embrace. They're saying we need to create an echo chamber. Those are their words. We need to create an echo chamber
Yeah.
by utilizing podcasters who, and that's the exact same, that is evidence that they are not any different. They're just trying something different. They're just avoiding ad spending by going through podcasts instead, by having other people their own attack dogs, essentially. It's just like what Don Jr. is
Yeah.
doing, but not outright racist, not
Yeah.
anti-immigration necessarily, but it's I can only imagine it's going to be a bland variety of why you should vote for us because we
Yeah.
aren't the other guy.
Well, and
That's what it's
that's
going to
what
come
they're
down to.
missing is that Joe Rogan isn't a political podcast. It's not
Right.
even a news
Exactly.
podcast, you know.
It's
Andrew
definitely not.
Schultz is not a political podcast. What was that?
It's definitely not a news
Yeah,
podcast. You're
no.
right. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
a lot of these podcasts that Trump went on, Theo Vaughn, I mean, it's not a political podcast. It's where people hang out. It's like
Right.
hanging out with your best friend for an hour or 3 hours and, making stupid jokes and just talking about what's going on in the world. And I think to go back to, my argument in favor of leftists and Democrats going on these podcasts, the biggest complaint that I heard in because I watch and listen to a lot of focus groups. Um, the biggest complaint that people had with Kamala Harris, and I'm still hearing this, is that she wasn't authentic, that they didn't really know who she was, that she seemed very scripted, that, she just seemed to like change her mind based on the mood of the country, and which is true. I mean, she had a completely different set of talking points in the 2020 primary than she did in the 2024 primary. And if you're going to change your mind on something, which is, people do, people change their mind on topics. I have, at least explain it to people, explain your evolution. But every time she went on a show, she had the same scripted answer. I mean, it got so boring. There was no like, oh wow, I didn't know that about her, or oh wow, that's something new, or I'm seeing a different side of her. Every single time she went on, I knew exactly what she was going to say. I grew up in a middle class neighborhood. We didn't have much. Like it was always that same basic story, right? It's like,
Or being authentic because somebody said be more authentic. Like she has strategists and
yeah,
handlers or something who are like, laugh more. Why
right.
wouldn't you just laugh if something was funny? Just be
Exactly.
normal. Like be
Exactly.
yourself. Like I think it was very static, very cardboard.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything in that campaign where I was like, "Oh, wow, this is different." I was
Yeah.
hopeful that she would win and beat Donald Trump, but again, I wasn't necessarily voting or rooting for something that I believed in.
Yeah.
It's just the one thing where I thought I still had a fighting chance. And then you see people like Governor Newsom, Gavin Newsom,
Ugh,
who launched a podcast.
God.
Is that still going even? I mean, that got
I
so
think
much
it is.
criticism.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was horrible. So look, if you want to be in a situation where you're natural, and you want to be seen as someone who's willing to have discussions with the other side, don't go straight to Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon, the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
And especially don't do it if you aren't going to hold them accountable and call them out on things and sit
Well,
there
yeah,
and
that's the
find
thing. I
common
mean, have
ground,
them on if you want to have them on. But
but rip them
again,
apart.
yeah, it goes back to my premise of all leftists try to do is move right. Like, oh, well, everybody voted for Trump and we want to win back some of these bros and all the young guys. So I gotta, obviously I must have to move to the right if I want to recapture them. No, what the Democratic Party is missing is people aren't voting. They didn't move towards Donald Trump because they think that tariffs are great. They move towards Donald Trump because they falsely believe that he is authentic. They falsely believe that he is anti establishment and that he's going to fight for them. And so when you see these idiots like Newsom, who is so just another cookie cutter, like made in a lab Democrat, um, what they're doing is just pandering to the
Yep.
right. They're not being
Right.
authentic. That's not his authentic self. And I don't think we even know
Yeah.
what the authentic Newsom is
I don't
because,
even want to know.
yeah,
It's that bad.
he talks a good game. He's, oh, I do appreciate some things he's done here in California, like raising the minimum wage, especially in such an expensive state. But then he goes and does the carve out for his donor,
Hmm.
for the family that owns what is that restaurant? I always forget the name. Panera Bread.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. Right.
does that
Well, and
little
he's
carve out of, oh, well, if you make your own bread, then you're not subject to this minimum wage. It's like, what? What the hell does that have to do with the minimum wage?
and I'm not in California, but he's is very anti homeless, right? And
Yeah.
wants to make that illegal, and that doesn't seem to be addressing the problem, right?
No, and
And
that's another thing, that they let themselves be dragged to the right. It's like,
right.
oh, well, the Republicans just took the House and the Senate, so that must mean that people hate homeless people and, the voters just want them gone. And it's like, no,
Yeah.
they just want
It's
you to lift them out of poverty, give them the resources they need so that they're not living on the street, so that they're not becoming a hazard and, causing issues and endangering people.
yeah, I don't even
I
I so I often think about how what we call conservatives or conservatism isn't really.
mhm,
And okay, let's say there are actual bona fide conservatives. All right, let's just go with that. Look at all of the damage they're doing right now. It's I refer to it as all demolition, no carpentry, right? They're just
yeah,
tearing down, they're not building anything up, they're just tearing down and revising history while they do it and
mhm,
making education harder to come by, but also like revising what can be and can't be taught, right? And
mhm,
they're skewing it all their way. If we were talking about my house, right? Let's say I lived in like, I don't know, 3,000 square foot house, and somebody said, somebody that lived here said we should build more. I'd say, you know what? I don't know. Let's be conservative about it. I don't think we should keep building. Let's just be happy with what we have and maybe learn how to live more minimalist, right? Well,
mhm,
if somebody knocked down half of it, I wouldn't be conservative anymore. I'd say we need to build up. We need to rebuild. So I don't think there's a place in our government right now for conservatism as in the traditional sense because so much of it has been wrecked. I think the way
yeah,
forward is only progressivism and progressive values and principles, which really just translate to policy that uphold basic human rights and needs of survival, right? We're not asking for
yeah,
anything outrageous. These are things that most of the civilized world has already embraced and offered to their citizens.
mhm,
So when it comes to somebody like um, Newsom or the Democrats being pulled right in terms of trying to appease those voters who, quote unquote, left us, right,
mhm,
and went over to the other side. Um, I don't think that strategy is working without a ton of criticism for what's actually going on. We're playing left and right as if that's always going to be in the traditional sense. And what I would much rather see is I'm a broken record. Go after the folks who aren't voting. If you offered them a reason to go, oh man, I got to get to the polls,
yeah,
I got to assume that's going to grab a lot of the people that are currently pulling you right. That's going to
yeah,
grab a lot of the people who go, that's something to vote for, not just against. Because, like, when you were on my show, we talked about how regretful Trump voters would still vote Republican because they're voting against the Democrats.
Yeah.
Maybe that's because they believe there's a fighting chance on the Republican side. There isn't, but maybe they believe that. Or maybe it's because they believe all the horrible things they're hearing about Democrats, and the Democrats haven't done enough to combat that. And that
Yeah.
very much comes down to the media. And if they're going to create an echo chamber called the Bullhorn Project or whatever, they should call it the Vacuum Project, but whatever
Yeah.
they call it, then what you're doing is um, you are creating um, you're playing into the narratives that already exist working against you, and it's
Yeah.
already and you are fighting this uphill battle instead of leveling the playing field, and it's silly. It
Mhm.
doesn't make any sense. There are so many ways to inspire people and motivate people, but it seems like they just want to maintain their current position. They want to have this two-party system where it's kind of nice for them. They'll be in office for the rest of their life. They'll always have health care. They won't have to
Yeah.
work full time all year long, you know? And
Yeah.
we need more working class people, inspiring working class people to vote for them. That's all there is to it.
Yeah. I think there's just a sense of the Democratic Party that they are the know-it-alls. They are, like I said earlier, they're just condescending in their view of like, and not Democratic voters. I mean, the Democratic elite, the establishment.
Right.
They come across as, oh, just sit your pretty little head down and we'll take care of it. We know better. We know what you need. It's like the whole thing with Bernie, that they all swarmed around Biden and said, "Oh, we're going to change where we do the first primary to give Biden an edge. We're going to change the state. We're going to just tell everybody to get out, get out of the
Right.
race, and everybody prop up Biden because we don't want Bernie." And we think we know better than the voters. I mean,
Yeah. Buttigieg goes from number 2 to endorsing number 4 or
yeah,
whatever it was.
yeah,
Somebody's pulling strings there. And it's
yeah,
no wonder why
yeah.
Blue MAGA, which that's a term I don't utilize enough, is
Mhm.
saying, Pete Buttigieg goes on TV, says one thing, somebody
Mhm.
reposts it on social media going, sounding very presidential. And it's like,
Yeah,
really? Maybe he just sounds like he said the right thing. Like,
yeah.
this is a low bar. It's a
I know.
really low bar.
I know.
Freaks me
Yeah,
out.
and to know that he was involved in taking down Bernie, that he was involved in those surreptitious meetings that went on with Pelosi and the others. I'm actually doing a show today about that,
Mm,
but I will personally never trust him.
right.
I
Same.
mean, that to me is not the democratic process. To me, the democratic process is allowing the voters basically what the right did, and this is why I think that the Republicans have a higher approval rating, even though they're still, underwater. They still don't have a majority, but their approval rating is like almost double in some polls of what Democrats is, and
It's
among
so
their base.
terrifying. I can't, but can you believe that? It's like, when are the Democratic Party going to sit up and go, you guys, this is totally our fault. We
Yeah,
are screwing this up.
yeah,
Like, maybe we should do something different. Instead, they're like, nope, lean into it.
yeah, yeah,
We're definitely not doing anything wrong. It's
yeah,
it's the people criticizing us that are making us look bad.
yeah. No, I
That's
know.
incredible.
I love how some of these politicians are, oh, well, it's just the media. It's the no, no, it's not the media. You're not listening to your base. You're not doing what your base wants. They're telling you what they want. This is like every woman I know who's gotten divorced. It's like I begged and I pleaded and I tried and I told him what I wanted and I told him what I needed and he just refused. And so finally I was like, okay, I guess
Done.
you're not going to change, so I'm out of here. That's the way it is with the Democratic Party, and they don't get it. They don't get that you're not listening to us. We're telling you we
Yeah.
want somebody different. We don't want the cookie cutter basic Democrat who was, created in a lab by all of these string pullers and donors, by the donor class.
They're not
Um
even they're not even playing the populist game. Like, how
yeah.
about try
Yeah, they don't even
lying about what
lie.
you stand for? I mean, you could try that. But like they do it in a way that they have it's like you were saying where they're the one thing that New York Times article actually got right was they said we need to stop being hall monitors. I think
Mhm.
that is very, very good description of what's going on. Talking to people as if they are immediately wrong and don't understand how it works. Like
Mhm.
on the campaign trail, oh, I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to get in Congress and make a difference. You'll see. And then when they get in there, once they're elected, they say, oh, little baby brain, you don't understand how politics and government works. I
Yeah.
do, just simply magically because I'm here now. I totally get it. And it's one of those things where once they talk to people who they realize understand, like, okay, you've explained it. Now I understand. That person talking to you is either going to adjust their speaking to be on to understand that you're now on the same level, you've grasped what they were trying to tell you, or they will go talk to other people who still don't get it. And the
Mhm.
rest of the time they'll just talk broadly as if no one gets it because that's a safe bet. But a lot of us, especially progressives, are like, okay, buddy, we get it. We know what's going on. Government
Mhm.
isn't, it might be complex and needlessly complex, but it's not
Mhm.
mysterious. We understand. There
Yeah.
are things you can do to make Congress a procedural minefield right now, and you aren't.
Yeah.
Why aren't you? Why
Yeah.
aren't you bucking up the system? Why aren't you
Yeah.
making it impossible to get anything done? Those things are in place
Yeah.
so you can do that, and you're not.
Yeah.
Why?
Or
Well,
look at, I mean, not to give him credit, God forbid I ever give Donald Trump credit, but
yeah.
look at what all he's doing. Not that it's good, but look at what all he's doing and jamming down the
Yep.
throats of the American people with just his force and will. So if he can do that for nefarious purposes, then everybody's sitting back going, well, okay, then Democrats could do that too. Democrats have
Right.
had the House and the Senate and the presidency, you know?
Yeah, it's Republicans won't let us do it when we have the majority, and there's nothing we can do when we don't have the majority.
Yeah,
That's not
that's the
how it
line that they
works.
sell. And
Right.
people are now seeing, no, that's bullshit. If
I
you
hope
want to
so.
just steamroll your way through and make shit happen, you can do it. You may have to break a few rules, but you know what? If you're doing it for the people, if you're doing it for the good of the country, people are going to be happy about it. I mean, I just watched hours last night of another focus group that I'm also doing a show on in the coming week. And some people are not, 100%. These were swing voters. These are people who voted for
Mhm.
Biden in 20, voted for Trump in 24.
Okay.
And they are not all 100% on board with everything that Trump is doing. And a lot of them are very uninformed. um, they're busy, they're living their lives, they're, keeping a roof over their head, but they, by and large, are like, at least something's happening. At
Yeah.
least he's making stuff happen.
And he
And
talks about it.
yeah, and they
Yeah.
don't really care if you're breaking the rules as long as it's for their benefit. Now we know it's not for their benefit, it's for his wealthy donors, and that's, what's in this new bill that they passed. But these uninformed voters, these people who are low information voters, they think that this is all for them, and so they're willing to overlook a little bit of, hanky panky and like,
Right.
you know, some
Well, and
not so on the up and up activity.
if the system never worked for them, who cares if it's broken?
Yeah.
Whereas there are parts that very much worked for them or were being improved as far as, like being able to register to vote. Well, I don't care about that. I'm not voting anyway, right? Like
Mm,
who cares? But
yeah.
there's all these things that people are okay with in terms of themselves personally or as individuals. And we not only, I mean, maybe there was a time in this country where people could get away with not being political or talking about politics, but
Hmm.
it's like Senator Nina Turner always says, like, you may not do politics, but politics does you. And guess what?
Yeah.
It's stalking you and it's going to
Yeah.
get you when you turn down that dark alley, right? Like, it's a
Yeah.
horror show out there. Politics is not cool. And
Yeah.
there's nothing you can do as an individual that would fix it. We can
Yeah.
only do it collectively as groups and by organizing. That really is when people say, okay, guys, Trump's in power. It's time to organize locally. I ask two things. One, what do you mean? What's your version of that? Give us some tips. Give us some ideas of what to do. And two, are we just organizing to fight back or are we organizing to improve society? And
Hmm.
like, why is that such a scary thing? Why is that so bad? Why are
Yeah.
the Democrats so scared of that? I went to a town hall. I live in South Carolina. It's bright red. And I
Oh,
went
wow.
to I went to a town hall about this local dam that was very old and needed to be replaced.
Hmm.
And the local congressman got up and talked about how awful China is, and we're all like, okay, why are we talking about this? And then we said a prayer, and I was like, I don't pray, but okay, it's the South. And then he said, oh, guess what? We got funding approved for the dam. It's going to be fine. We're like, buddy, this is an email. We don't need to be here for this. What
Yeah.
is going on? Right? Like, it's really weird. So then on the other hand, I've been having episodes where I talk to people who are very progressive in my county and about how they're organizing and what that looks like. And it is as much pro Democratic Party as it is anti Democratic Party. They're working together. It just
Hmm.
goes to show that there are places in this country where you can't be. And this goes back to what we were saying about purity tests and like canceling
Hmm.
people for not being aligned with your exact brand of politics. There are
Yeah.
places in this country where we have to do what it takes. My pen pal is Lindsey Graham and Tim Scott. That's who I'm writing to and calling to say, please don't privatize the post office.
Yeah.
Like, I hope enough people are calling to get through to you.
Mm,
But we can't trust that they are serving all of the citizens, whether they voted for them or not. We can't trust that. So we
yeah.
have to find ways to not compromise, but work together in the spirit of keeping discussion alive and keeping our ideas, all the ideas on the table, but going with what works best,
Yeah.
not what you don't want to do. And the
Mhm.
Democrats seem to be very afraid of change right now. The Democratic
Yeah.
Party, they seem to be very afraid of change at all costs. And I don't know what could be a worse outcome than what we have right now. I'm scared to
Yeah.
think there could be one, but there probably is.
Now, if there's ever a time when they have to get real and, you know, look in the mirror and honestly take stock of where they've gone wrong. And I
Yeah.
keep hearing these people, "Oh, we just need a more centrist candidate. We need more, someone more middle of the." We've been doing that.
What's
We've
more
done that
centrist than what we've,
over and
yeah.
over and over. We have not had a true progressive populist leftist since what? FDR,
It's
you
been a
know?
long time. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
even
And
people even go back to Jimmy
and
Carter, and that
how is
wasn't
it
so great.
working out for us? It's like
Yeah,
it,
we've had
it's
people
not
either
going that great.
they've either been ushering in neoliberalism or running with it, right? Or
Yeah.
like making it the establishment. But let me just take a second to go back to what we were talking about toward the beginning of this conversation, which I'm really enjoying this. Like this feels very good to me. Like have getting all this out.
Mhm.
But we're not just commiserating, right? Like
Right.
this is constructive. There's a lot of podcasts where it's like, okay, these guys are preaching to the choir, but we're kind of not. There there is a perception of the left in media being a failure, right?
Mhm.
And that's when it's that's when it's seen as only an opposition to the right. And okay, it's not as strong. It doesn't have the same presence. I get it. I get it. But there are reasons why I think it justifies us not being the same. I'm not sure if that means it's a failure. Um, but the other thing that we have on lefty media, and this comes from like 3 years of interviewing, like, you know, over 100 people about on what we call the online left in
Uh-huh.
terms of like media outlets. The audience is as much a part of it as the host. It's a
Yeah.
big deal. I came from the audience. I didn't just start doing this because I went to broadcasting school. I didn't. I
Hmm.
did this because I was a fan and wanted to promote the online left as much as possible and to prop them up. And so I started a show where I could cross pollinate audiences and realized the audience is massive. You look at like just one of these shows will have millions of subscribers,
Yeah.
right? We cannot play that down. We cannot not bring that up. The
Yeah.
audience and the viewers are such a part of this. If we bring them into it, if we bring the viewers into this, and we can really start to organize and we can really start to get things done. The viewers are as much a part as the online left as the host. And I mean, look at it this way. How many hosts are there? A couple hundred, maybe 1,000, maybe. That's not millions.
Yeah.
So, at any time, you could say, yeah, we're a failure. Okay, well, we're still here. We still exist. Look at all
Hmm.
these viewers. It's still a thing. Maybe it just needs somebody to utilize it properly. Maybe somebody just needs to come along and enrich it and support it. And that's just not what establishment Democrats do. That's not what the Democratic
Yeah.
Party does. And so when they go to this um, New York Times article, when they go to this tactic and strategy of creating a podcast sphere that will
Yeah.
prop up the Democratic Party, that's not even for the viewers. That's not
Hmm.
even for the voters. That's
Yeah.
for them. And I
And
think that's
people can
shameful.
sniff that out so easily.
Yeah, I hope they do.
It's not authentic. It's there you have a goal in mind, it's like when you get a call from someone trying to sell you something. They're trying to sell you something. That's their whole point.
Yep.
So, it's not like having a conversation with someone and then casually bringing up, oh, yeah, yeah, I use this product and, it really works well and blah, blah, blah. And then the other person goes, oh, really? Maybe I should try it. That's different. That's what the Rogans of the world do. They're not there trying to sell you on Donald Trump or any particular politician. They just happen to bring up politics, and sometimes they will have on politicians. But their conversation isn't about you got to vote for me. You got to vote for my party.
Right.
Here's why, and here's what I do. I mean, it's conversational and it's casual, and it draws people in for different reasons, and they already have that trust and belief in that person, and they already like that person. And so then when
Yeah.
they recommend something, just like recommending a product to a friend, you're recommending this politician, and people go, hey, Joe seems, I mean, not that I would say this, but because especially lately, he seems like very red pilled and
Hmm.
off the rails. But there was a time, when, again, I didn't agree with everything he said or all of his views, but there was a time when he had leftist views of trying to help people. He still is very open about the Gaza issue, and in my opinion, on the right side of that issue. Um, I
Yeah,
think we're,
I don't think he would have Bernie Sanders back on his show and argue with him about his ideas. I don't think he could.
yeah,
I think
no,
he would be out of his league. And whereas Donald Trump, I'm not, it's an assumption on my part, but I'm not confident that he is the mastermind behind all of his policy. I think there's a lot of influence. You look at Project 2025, the
yeah,
authors of that, Stephen Miller. I think
Hmm.
that there's a lot of people pulling the strings behind the scenes, but I don't think he has a handler. I don't think he has somebody saying, okay, now Trump, when you sit down with Rogan, don't
Yeah.
forget, spin it back to this, spin it back to
Yeah.
that. This
No.
guy has his very own playbook for
Yep.
everything. It's
Yeah.
different when it's Harris or Biden. I think they're very much being told, okay, look, when you go out there, here's what you're going to do. These are the points. And
Hmm.
they're,
Yeah. It's the
whether they're,
consultants.
yeah, and
They
whether they're
they
crafting
oh
their own
they
policy, it's
overpay these
irrelevant.
consultants
Right.
who have lost so many elections, and it's like I don't get it. I don't get like how are these people so high paid and they're so wrong.
It's
They're
incredible.
so missing the mark and don't understand the moment that we're in. And that's why I think oh, what is her name? I don't know if you've had her on.
Hmm.
What is the young woman that's
Cat
running?
Abu,
Who is it?
Abu Ghazala, Cat
Yes.
Abu Ghazala. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Have you had her on your show?
The invite is out there.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to have her on too. I haven't
I
reached out.
revised. Okay, do this. Revise your invite to be a shorter segment. I've heard
Uh,
that the replies to interview requests are we have about 10 minutes.
okay.
So, yeah, so dwindle it down and just
Okay.
try and get some quality stuff out of it. But there you go. I mean,
Yeah, but she's like a perfect example of someone who
perfect.
already had an audience. People already like her, they already trust her. She's trying to do good with
Yeah.
her candidacy, and I just think the Democratic Party cannot get out of their own way.
Yep.
And to go back to what I was saying about, how they shunned people like Rogan because they say one thing that they don't like. Like I've had it here on my show, and luckily, but because of the way I grew up and my family dynamic, I have such a thick skin that it's like I you could literally call me any name and I don't care. but
Right.
um but I do read through the comments. And so I'll see people saying things like, oh, why did you use the word guys? You shouldn't use that term, it's so sexist and blah, blah. We need to drop all of that shit. Like, seriously, I have been speaking this way for decades. I am a grown woman who has been speaking this
Yeah.
way my whole life. You're not going to change the way I speak. Like, random
I
person on the internet, you're not going to change the way I speak. And it's
yeah.
so annoying. And that is the stuff that drives people away from the party because, like, they want everyone to be so cookie cutter and you can't say this and you can't say that. And one of my biggest issues, and one thing that I think drove so many people to Donald Trump, is the left's refusal, by and large, to just not even embrace, but just accept and not make fun of people for believing in alternative medicine
Mhm.
because it is very legitimate. I come from that background. Became a health coach because after decades, literally my whole life of living with chronic ailments that no doctor could fix, horrific allergies, horrific asthma, chronic fatigue. I had cystic acne. I mean,
Mhm.
on my body, even not just on my face, decades. And, take this medicine, do this, use this cream, well, allergy shots. Nothing helped me until a friend of mine, unfortunately, she is a Trump supporter, but she said some things again, having a conversation, hearing from someone that you like, know, and trust. But this was before Donald Trump. um, and hearing her say, yeah, I reversed my heart disease because I went plant based. My boyfriend
Right.
reversed his diabetes because he went plant based. I was like, you know what? I'm desperate. And this is a good analogy for politics. You know, people get desperate, they're willing to try anything, even Donald Trump, you know? And I was like, let me see, let me look into this. And then what really did it was the animal cruelty aspect. And I'm a huge animal lover. But within months, I'm talking 3 months, everything went away. My skin cleared up, my allergies were gone, my asthma is like very rarely, only if I get sick with, like a lung infection, do I have an issue. Like everything vanished. My energy was through the roof. I was like a new person. And so when people say, on the left, trust the science, there is science to back this stuff up. You just have to avail yourself of it. But when you shut your mind off, when you close your mind to the possibility that, hey, maybe these things work, maybe there's other alternatives, maybe there's answers out there that doctors don't know about because they are put into a system that
Right.
is, money motivated, that is financially, motivational, that we are only going to teach you how to cut people open, poison them, with certain things, give.
For profit medicine,
Yeah,
really.
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all based around making money for the insurance companies, making money for the pharmaceutical companies, making money for the doctors and the hospitals. I mean, e- and this is something a friend of mine, my best friend actually, who's a nurse, she brought to my attention. Almost every pharmaceutical drug came out of a food or an
Oh,
herb or a
sure.
substance. Like they determined, okay, this
Yeah.
herb or this certain ingredient in the food or molecule or whatever, um, this helps to tamp down this disease or this symptom. And because you can't make money, let's like garlic, for instance,
Yeah.
one of the most powerful, potent cancer fighting substances on the planet. You can't,
Yeah.
they, they can't package that and make money off of it,
What
you
was that?
know?
There was a documentary that came out like 6 or 7 years ago where bodybuilders were talking about plant-based diets, and they were
Mm-hmm.
like, one of the taglines in the trailer was something like, they always say you're strong as an ox, but ox eat grass. They
Yeah.
don't eat meat, right? Like,
Yeah.
why do we use that if we don't believe in it? And it was transformative for them. But I think that there's something, like, I don't think people should have to debate everything they believe in, but we shouldn't forget that debating is as much about hearing the other side as it is about making your own argument, and
Mm-hmm.
that we should remain as open-minded as possible,
Yeah.
and that closed-mindedness, especially when it comes to politics, is a deal breaker.
Yeah.
That means that the progressive, or whatever it is, the campaigning is over,
Mm-hmm.
that all your chances are less so now, because you're not allowing for a diversity of thought. Whether
Yeah.
and that doesn't mean that you have to co-sign whatever it is the other person believes. It's an
Right.
opportunity for you to let them hear the other opinion, and it's an opportunity for you to also double check what it is you believe. I happen to
Right.
be a firm believer in plant-based diets. Some people will say, "Well, I that doesn't work for me." Okay, what do I know? I'm not a doctor, but I can still talk to you about the benefits of a plant-based diet, right?
Uh-huh.
I can also talk to you about the benefits of playing tennis, whether you like to watch it or not. It's a
Right.
healthy thing to do, eh, for a lot of people.
Yeah.
There's not we shouldn't live in a world where it's this way or that way. And the Republican Party and Trump, they want people to believe. That's why they always say, we're dirty commies, right? Like, we want
Mm-hmm.
everyone to fall in line and wear drab gray clothing and
Yeah.
speak the same and do the same. And then I have to wonder why they're so upset about DEI if that's the case, right? Because that would be antithetical to their accusations that we're all trying to be the exact same and
Yeah,
homogenize
homogenous.
everything and
Yeah.
be boring. But um, I think that we need to embrace diversity in ways that aren't easy for us, and I think
Hmm.
that we need to be open minded at every step of the way in order to keep this fluid, keep this moving, right? I don't we have too many dams in the stream.
Yeah.
That's not going to work at some point. That's then what's happening downstream? I don't know. That's a problem. We need to
Yeah.
take everything into consideration all along the process. And I recently saw a cartoon, and I'm a comic guy, so I'm always looking at this stuff. But it
Hmm.
was, I think maybe it was a European guy because I didn't recognize the name and thus can't remember it. But it essentially said that in order to understand life, you have to look backwards, but living life is about going forward. So there
Hmm.
need to be points along the way where you stop and reflect, but keep moving.
Hmm.
Keep going. Don't pause long enough for it to be its own disruption, right? And
Yeah.
that means working together. And this is why I say there's no one individual who's going to solve all the problems with government. And so saying that
Mm.
this doesn't suit me personally, so I'm not voting for it or I'm voting against it,
Mm.
it's just kind of like not it's definitely not where we are right now in terms of politics.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to be trying to get on the same page. That's
Yeah.
why, and I think this is getting very old, but that's why so many progressives will vote against their own best interests in order to vote against the Republicans and to keep trying to have the lesser of two evils so we don't have the
Mm.
most evil. It's getting old, but that's
Yeah.
kind of why we do it is because we're still trying to have that fighting chance. And I just think more and more that's why I say electoral politics is a smaller percentage of how we get things done going forward. And we need to look at things in terms of the bottom up. And then that
Mm.
automatically opens the door for um, a lot of different people. And it might get us back to a place where it's like your politics kind of don't matter right now because we're just trying to get better wages. We're just trying to get a safer
Yeah.
working environment. We're just trying to get more paid time off. Why is the CEO making tons of money when we're earning the money, when we're creating the product, generating the profits? Why is it all going to the one or two guys at the top at the executive level? Like that's where your politics almost you can say, yeah, I'm a Republican, Democrat. It doesn't matter. We have the same job. We're
Hmm.
fighting for the same rights on the job. When you start to look at things that way, it allows for people to be more diverse in a genuine manner and it allows for people to have different ideas and then you're just shooting the shit on your lunch break versus hashing it out or arguing with somebody on Twitter or
Yeah.
Facebook, and that's not constructive whereas person to person it really is. You
Yeah.
start to tear down these barriers that we've allowed politicians to put up in between us. Like
Yeah.
again, don't play into that narrative no matter who the politician is. Do you remember when Alexandria Ocasio Cortez went on with Hassan Piker and played video games?
Yeah.
Remember that?
Hmm.
And everyone was like criticizing that. And they were like, get
Hmm.
something done. Talk about politics. Why aren't you doing anything with your platform? Will you
Yeah.
just relax for a second? Like,
Yeah.
can we not just show that these are real people having a good time? Can
Yeah.
we not just show that
Exactly
they're
the
like
point of
everyone
like,
else? It's not fake.
you
It's
know,
real.
Rogan is not a political podcast. And that's the thing. Like, we have popular leftists like Hassan. We have, Breaking Points. We have Kyle Kalinske, who have large audiences. I think Hassan's show is most important because it's not 100% about politics. He does talk a lot about politics, but he does a lot of other things too
Yeah.
that bring a lot of young people into the
A
mix.
lot. A
Yeah,
lot.
and then they like him, they respect him, they, appreciate his show, they find him funny or whatever, and then or they connect with him on bodybuilding,
Right.
and then they go, "Oh, he's for the Democratic Party. He's, maybe I should look at them again. Maybe they're not as bad as I thought if he's for them."
And talk
I
about not polished. That guy is generally eating dinner.
Yeah.
and watching one of his own old videos for some reason. Like
Yeah.
it just goes to show, like, you got a webcam, you got a microphone, go for it.
Yeah.
You don't have a microphone, still go for it.
Yeah. I think Democrats are too busy trying to construct messages instead of trying to solve people's problems.
Right.
They should start with the end in mind, as you do with any trying to solve any problem. People want to be healthy. People want to not be stressed out about money. People want to be able to take care of their families. They want to be able to go to sleep at night without the anxiety of, oh my God, how am I going to make this work? How am I going to get through the end of the month and pay my bills and not have my landlord banging on the door because I haven't paid them,
Do
you
you think
know?
at these donor retreats that the Democratic Party is having all the time, do you think anyone, I don't care if it's a donor or one of the operatives, do you think anyone ever goes, "Hey, are we going to talk about healthcare this time?"
Yeah.
Would
No.
they be invited back? Like, would they
Yeah.
be laughed out of the room? Would people just be like, "Who do you think you are? Health
No.
what?"
They come at it like a typical salesman. Like I was saying, like
Yeah.
somebody, like a phone salesman. This is my goal. Here's what I'm here to do. I have a script to read and I just got to go through the steps because I'm trying to get something from you. Instead of having the attitude of I want something for you. I want to give you something. I want to make your life better. It's me, me, me. What can I get? I need your vote. you
Right.
know?
It's really eye-opening, or should be eye-opening. Unfortunately, I don't know if it is with the majority of people in this country, but it should be pretty telling that a a politician would never stand up. I mean, you get your Bernie Sanders and your
Mm,
AOCs and your Ilhan Omars, they will do it, but you and Rashida Tlaib, there are people out there who will do it. They're shunned and criticized and condemned by their own party for doing it,
mhm,
but to say we have a low stakes democracy. It's two parties trading a slight majority to fundraise off each other, and that's about it. And the majority of their time spent in office is fundraising for the party as much as for their next campaign. They're not actually passing policy. I mean, obviously, they're not passing policy, but like, just think about if half the Democrats in Congress, let's just say in the House, all put out one statement saying we are for this. And they listed three things. Let's just say, healthcare, minimum wage, not privatizing the post office, because these are things that everyone would benefit from, right? Let's just say they do that. Would anyone
mhm.
notice? Do you think anyone would care? I mean, certainly if they had a
No.
network of podcasts and they broadcasted it across those podcasts, people would start to pay attention. But I really don't
If they
think
didn't
anyone
just put out a
notices.
press release, I
Yeah.
agree. Because
But like,
that's their go-to is, oh, we got to put out a press release. Oh, we got to get somebody on MSNBC tonight. It's like
yeah.
you're not going to reach anybody new that way. That's why I was saying I wish that the left could be, they like to say, oh, we're inclusive. Okay, you're inclusive and yeah, okay, you're for minorities, but are you inclusive of people with different views? That's the
Yeah.
underlying
Go on the
theme
Fox
and
town
goal
hall.
is like, like my whole thing about the alternative medicine, like their whole attitude, oh, you're so stupid. We're going to listen to, the scientists and the people who are supposed to know. And it's like, okay, well, there's other scientists and there's other doctors who have different views, who have gotten out of their own little bubble, who have done research. I was just listening. I don't know if you watched the podcast, the YouTube show called Diary of a CEO.
No.
How he
Mm-mm.
has a huge, like over 10 million followers.
It
But
sounds like something I wouldn't think would be my speed. Is it about a CEO? Like,
no, I wish he had given it a different name because
yeah,
basically what he does is
bad
he has
marketing.
on experts from every universe in the world, like
Okay.
whether it be money, health, relationships, sex, you even sometimes politics. But
Is he
he
a
will,
CEO, the host?
yeah, he
Oh,
is,
okay.
yeah, very wealthy young guy who's had, like, I think he's only 32, and
Oh, okay.
he's had, like, I don't know, 5 different companies that he's built up over the years,
Okay.
and made a fortune. So he just interviews experts in every single field, and they talk for 2 hours typically. But he just had on a doctor, I think it's William Lee, talking about disease and how you can reverse disease and blah blah blah, and how food is medicine and so forth. And I mean, this is like a longtime doctor, scientist, researcher. Like, this is not some woo woo out there guy, who says he reversed his mother's stage 4 cancer. And automatically on the left, with so many people on the left, you get this eyebrow raise and, oh, that can't be true, because why
Right.
wouldn't every doctor be doing it?
I
Oh,
mean,
gee, I don't know, maybe because there's more money to be made in not curing things, maybe because they all get thousands of dollars in kickbacks for every time you have chemotherapy.
you just
I
need to
mean,
look a little bit harder. You're asking the question. Now look into it,
yeah,
right? Like you
yeah.
can figure this out.
Yeah, they just automatically assume, that oh, this can't be real because my doctor didn't know about it. Well, guess what? There's a lot of things that people don't know about, but they exist. you know,
It's just they
I
call it a
mean,
system for a reason.
yeah,
It's an established system. It's not the kind of situation where your doctor's like, we have a lot of options.
yeah.
They're
I
just
mean,
like, we don't know
there's
what it is. We'll look
there's
into it.
treatments in Europe that we don't have here,
Well,
and
that's
they
another
and they work.
benefit of
You
a
know,
better healthcare system, like opening it up to where doctors are incentivized to actually keep people healthy rather than waiting for them to
exactly,
get sick. Like,
exactly.
like, once upon a time, doctors were very eager to tell people that certain cigarettes were better than others. Like,
Mm-hmm.
whoa. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
then they were like telling people, hey, you should have a big breakfast every morning. And
Mm-hmm.
those articles were printed in newspapers side by side with saying that breakfast should include bacon.
Yeah,
How many restaurants can you walk into right now for breakfast and there's bacon on the menu?
yeah.
Like, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Then
Now
why are
there,
we doing
I
this?
mean, there's a reason why we have commercials for milk. It's because
Right.
we fund them.
Yeah.
It's like a reciprocal relationship there. And I mean, it's ridiculous. I call it, liquid death, but
Yeah.
that's a whole
My
nother, that's a
my
whole nother
doctor
topic.
My doctor said, I don't have a regular doctor, right? I just moved to South Carolina a few years ago and I haven't been going to a regular doctor. I'm also, you know, doing okay. But they
Hmm.
said, oh, I'm starting to get notices in the mail now. They're saying, well, you're 50, you're going to have to do certain tests. And I was like, do you have any idea, like, what my lifestyle is? Do you want to know about my
Yeah,
diet or anything? Or are you just assuming that I, like everyone else, am on a steady diet of fast food and Cheetos? I like Cheetos, but
yeah,
like I'm not just eating that. Like
yeah.
I have a very well-rounded, balanced lifestyle and diet and exercise. And, I work
Hmm.
from home. So I make a point to, like, I could coach people on how to work from home, right? Get
Hmm.
up and act like you're leaving the house, shower, get
Hmm.
dressed, exercise, right?
Right.
Build it in. Um, don't say, "Oh, I get distracted by doing laundry." And well, okay,
Hmm.
I mean, if laundry wasn't part of your work routine before, why should it be now? But there are ways
Yeah.
to integrate it. Um, but like, it's just assuming that because we're all at a certain stage in life that we're all in need of the same sorts of um medical assistance or testing isn't necessarily the case. Now, I understand that there are checkpoints along the way. I get it. And I'm
Hmm.
apprehensive about certain things just because I'm sort of a wimp about it. I'm sorry, but I am. But like there are other things where I'm very much accounting for my age and I have been for a long time. and I'm
Yeah.
just doing things that naturally work for me and keep me active and energized in a way that I feel like can't be bad.
Yeah.
And so it's not for me to just start taking advice off whatever happens to be printed hanging on the wall in the doctor's office, as far as
Mm-hmm.
like, like I'm seeing a lot of ads in the bottom of an Axios newsletter email or the New York Times where they're like, 5 things to not having anxiety. What do you mean? Like reading the news? Come on. Like
Yeah.
I just got to the end of all this anxiety inducing news, and now you're going to tell me how to alleviate that. And also, like, how to build your financial future. And I'm like, what country are you living in? People are not able to do that or thinking about
Yeah.
it or going, oh, I better start saving millions for retirement. So, like, telling us that we have to be involved in medical exams and the traditional Western medicine system is also saying you're going to have to put a strain on your wallet. I hope you have health
Hmm.
care, because if you don't, we'll just turn you away. But
Yeah.
if you do, it still might not get total coverage. Like it really is a racket.
Yeah.
Things always like create as much problem as they claim to solve. Like,
Yeah. No, it's always about profit. And yeah,
yeah,
I hear you. I always tell people, if you notice, the people who are on the most medication have to go on even more medication because
right,
there's always side effects, you
right.
know.
We need
Yeah.
decentralized medicine. we
Yeah.
need to be able to create a system of promoting health and
Hmm.
encouraging people to go to the doctor just for a checkup, and it's not going to break the bank, and they're definitely not going to say, okay, I'm going to have to put you on this steroid or whatever it
Yeah.
is, right?
Yeah.
It's not, it's a system of promoting health, not preserving life. If
Yeah.
that makes sense. You should
Yeah.
have both, but I feel like it's more about like we need to keep people alive as long as possible at all costs,
Yeah.
no matter what. And for to do what? Continue to be
Yeah. To
sick,
suffer.
continue to not
Yeah.
be healthy and suffer? Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
no, I
really
heard, I can't
uncool.
remember what doctor said this, but a doctor once said, because people always go, oh, well, and I'm not saying modern medicine doesn't have its place or that it's not helpful
Oh
or that
yeah.
it hasn't saved
And
lives.
it
It
needs to be
does,
funded. Yeah.
there's absolutely a place for it. But this doctor said, people see that longevity has increased over the centuries, and that's true, right? We're not dying of dysentery or whatever anymore. But he said, we're not living longer, we're dying longer, and that's the
Right.
problem. Most people, I'll say, oh, I want to live to at least 100, and people will go, oh God, why would you want to live to 100? Miserable, and you're sick, and I'm like, why? Like, no, go look at the
Yeah.
blue zones.
I'm
You
I'm
know, the
I'm
blue zones
worried.
have like the highest concentration of centenarians, and they're all
Huh.
healthy and they're vibrant and their brains are all there and they're physically active and to the day they die, and there's very few diseases or chronic illnesses.
I want to stay
So
in the fight as long as possible, but I'm
yeah.
I'm apprehensive. I'm afraid I'm going to be too dumb to die. Like but I do want to, as long as I'm around, there's work to be done. Like I'm putting my head down and getting stuff done for sure,
Yeah.
but it does come a point where I think we need a system and a society where people are allowed to retire and people are allowed to do volunteer if they want, right? And
Hmm.
not have to work or not have to be a greeter or whatever it is. I want a world where we are so proud of the work that people have done by the time they're in their senior years that we can say, you know what? We got it. Don't worry. We're going
Hmm.
to make sure you're okay. There's so many young people in this healthcare system. Everything for you is going to be covered. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Take it. Now's your time to relax. But instead, people are in a position where they're like, will there be Social Security? I should retire
Yeah.
earlier than I wanted to so that I can at least get some Social Security.
Yeah,
It's
after you've paid
really,
into it.
it's precarious out there. Yeah, I
Yeah.
used to say, yeah, go ahead, take away my Social Security, but pay me back.
Right.
That's not how it works, really. Your money is going to somebody who's benefiting from it
Right.
now, but that's why it's not an entitlement. That's
Mhm.
why it's like a socialist program, right?
Yeah.
And so we need to be able to, you know, create greater transparency and build these things up rather than go, that doesn't work, get rid of it.
Yeah.
No, that's done now. Sorry,
This is
everyone.
why I have this theory that progressive politics is now the new moderate.
Oh, right.
because
Yeah.
because if you don't frame it as progressive, if you don't call it socialism, people across the board agree with the policies. People
Right.
agree that we should
Oh,
have
yeah.
social safety nets, that
Yeah.
people, even of the vast majority of Republicans say we should have free healthcare by now. Like every other
Yeah.
country has it, every other first world country has it. What is our issue? And yeah, so that's why if you really drill down to the core of what our issue in this country is, it is money. It is
Yep.
just greed and these companies wanting to make more and more money. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah. I was talking to someone the other day and I don't want to straw man. It was a semi-conservative relative. And I said, look, I'm capitalist because I was born into capitalism. It's just my default thing. It's not like I got to a certain age in my teens and I was like, you know what capitalism is worth fighting for? It's
yeah,
just the system we were born in. So if I
right.
woke up tomorrow and we were socialist, what is stopping me from going along with it? And what is keeping what would make me defend capitalism? Because this
Hmm.
doesn't seem to be working. This doesn't seem to be working for anyone outside of like 400 people, like the
Yeah.
top 1% or whatever.
Hmm.
Like there are people who are just, they will have more money than they will ever be able to spend. And so
Yeah.
they start buying up big things and they start to own everything. Well, they're not going to be around forever, even if longevity is a thing. They're not going to be around forever. Their kids will just come along and own that stuff,
Yeah.
then leave it to, and this will take it back to the media, leave it to the media to say so and so is a genius because of how much stuff they own when
Yeah.
it was just
Yeah.
gifted to them. Remember the guys, the rich guys who went in the submarine and didn't, the homemade submarine? Do you remember this from a few years ago? They were
Mm.
they were talking, one of their sons was on Twitter talking about how he was going to a concert, and everyone's like, "Whoa, man, your dad, we don't know what your dad's fate is yet. Aren't you going to just stay by the phone or watch the news or whatever?" And he's like, "I got to live my life." And then he started fighting with, I think it was Cardi B, and he was being
Wow.
racist and sexist. And I was like, make a note. We're like 10, 15 years out from this kid owning something and being
Yeah.
like called a genius by, he'll buy Tesla and he'll be a genius for it.
Yeah.
Like, remember this moment. This is the guy.
Yeah.
And yeah, people can change, but like, not a genius. Or he would have been showing signs a lot earlier, I think.
Yeah.
You
True.
don't just become a genius at 30 or something, right? Like, that's
Yeah.
not how it works.
Although the facade is falling away with Elon,
I hope so. I
I
mean,
mean this
that's
this
really
whole
bad.
the Cybertruck has been a complete dud, and
He's saying
people
he's
are,
going to spend less on politics going forward. Did you
yeah,
see that? And I was
yeah.
like, wow, it sounds like a loser to me. I don't,
Yeah,
I mean,
I just did a show about that yesterday, about all of his failures and him kind of running away,
oh, I
seem
got to
see
catch up.
sounds
I
like
haven't seen that.
he's kind of hurt, like, like
Oh
as
yeah, he's fragile.
yeah,
He is a
he
very
is a little
fragile
fragile
guy.
flower.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. You can hurt him. I
Yeah.
made a comic about him that was very insulting and I put it on Twitter and people were
Hmm.
like, they're going to shadow ban that. No one's going to see it. And I was like, he's going to see it.
Yeah.
And I can almost guarantee that he is going to see it because he's
Yeah.
so obsessed with himself and his ego. He's going to see it. This is just for him. It's a one
Yeah.
person audience. And people are like, actually, you're probably right. He's petty enough to look up his name and keep coming across stuff that is very insulting. So
Yeah.
I
Oh,
hope he saw
what's
it.
so funny? Kind of off topic, but I it made me think of it. I had no idea. I was recently going through my Twitter followers and looking to see like who
Oh,
am I following this person? Are they following me? I had no idea. Andrew Tate was following me.
oh, really?
Had no idea. Yeah. And it's so funny because
on
I
Twitter.
started thinking about it and I was like, oh my God, he probably saw one day because I didn't know he was following me, but I made a negative comment about him one day and called him Andrew Taint.
Oh, that's great. I'm going to start using that.
I
That's
was
awesome.
like, oh my God, he must have
Approved.
seen that.
Why do you think he was following you? Because it's not like Blue Sky where you have these follow lists where you just click
Yeah.
subscribe and you follow 1,000
I don't
people.
know. Yeah, I don't know. I
Oh,
had no idea he was following me. And I was like, oh my God, this is not the
he
kind of
doesn't
person I want
have,
following me.
he's definitely a meat eater, right? He's not
Yeah.
plant-based. It wasn't
Yeah.
that. Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. Also, what was the guy who he was on? Oh
Like
my
Dave
God.
Rubin or somebody like that, or Glenn Beck. Who
No.
else is hate following you, Gina? I don't get
Yeah,
these
I
hate
know. It was
follows.
what's his name? He was at the Capitol, but he was on Alex Jones's show. What is his name? Um,
Oh, he was like a uh, anchor or something for Alex
y-
Jones, one of his
yeah.
correspondents or whatever. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, blonde-haired guy.
Was he, does he
Uh,
have like a username or his actual name?
yeah, no,
I'm
he's
proud I don't
his
know.
actual name. I'm trying to think of
But he was following you?
yeah, I think he started following me after I did probably after I did one of the January 6th videos about him.
Oh. Oh. He's keeping tabs.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
see.
I'm thinking that's the reason because yeah, I did know he was following me. I
I
did
don't
catch
I
that.
don't
I was
I
like,
don't
oh,
hate follow.
that's
I
not
don't
good.
hate watch. I don't have I am surprisingly blocked. I'm always shocked when I'm blocked. I'm like, I'm not that outrageous. I'm not even
Yeah.
setting out to be insulting, but um I was blocked by a lot of people who I would have blocked. That's
Uh-huh.
fine. I mean, obviously that's a function of social media, whatever. I'm moving on. But
Yeah.
like I don't think I have anybody where I would be like, that's creepy. Why are they following
Yeah.
me? Maybe I do.
Yeah,
I
I
need
don't
to
think
look.
I've been blocked by anyone,
It's
which is
funny,
kind of surprising
I don't have
considering some of the
really,
things I
yeah.
say.
Well, you're not mean enough. You need to crank it up. But
I guess so. I mean, my family would disagree, but
for not having like the like hugest following or subscriber count on YouTube or social media, I am followed by and watched by a lot of online media. I
oh, that's
consider
cool.
myself kind of a hub for it, right?
Yeah.
Like I'll have somebody on my show and then I'll see them on Majority Report and I'll immediately email them and go, "Did they have you on because I recommended you?" Because I will do segments and send that around. I'll send
Oh,
that around to everyone and it's not falling on deaf ears. Everyone is
yeah.
like, "Hey, thanks, Matt. Thanks for the recommendation."
Oh,
Or,
that's cool.
yeah, I do see a lot of people that I'll recommend. I'll see them end up on these other shows and likewise I'm poaching people from their shows for sure,
Yeah.
but it's just word to anyone, any all new viewers of my show. um I consider myself sort of like where you buy a ticket for a destination, not necessarily a destination.
Yeah.
I'm not a resort, but there's a lot of resorts that I'm connected to and
Hmm.
networked in, and so
Oh,
you know
speaking of which, this would be a good time
Oh yeah, look at
to
that
tell my
segue. See it?
viewers, yeah,
Just naturally do it.
please share this new project that you have going on.
There has been a project that other people have tried and failed at. I think primarily because they do it for profit.
Mm,
Media networking and creating collectives is not an easy thing to do, but we are doing it. There's a handful of people that I am working with behind the scenes to create essentially that a media collective, a
hmm.
working class media collective. These are independent online shows and live streamers who you will know. We haven't started rolling out the schedule or the names just yet, but they're recognizable names, and we will be adding more and more as we go. This is one of those things where you not only have ongoing logistical challenges that the team will be addressing on a regular basis, but we will be growing and growing and growing steadily. And we need as much viewer support at the outset as possible. We're looking at 3 solid days of content a week to start, which is a lot. That is a tremendous effort, believe
Are you
me.
talking like 24/7 content?
That's what we want. We don't think it's
Wow.
going to be 24/7, but it may very well be because it'll be a combination of live shows and syndication. And so
Okay.
we are asking people to contribute in every way that they can. But it, we have lofty goals. Um,
Okay.
but our mission is to
Mm-hmm.
support each other and to gain support from the audience. It's called This Space. You can go to
Okay.
thisspace.tv. That's the website. We have a countdown on there now and links to
Okay.
all of our social media. And
And
we're
this is on
asking
YouTube?
people, it's going to be on YouTube to begin,
Okay.
and then we'll branch out from there. So you got to play it smart. If you go too big too soon, it could crumble. And so
Right.
we're being realistic, but believe me, um, we started with the biggest idea possible, the dream. If we fall
Mm-hmm.
short of that, it's still going to be pretty big. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of effort though, and we're being realistic and practical. But the main thing for people to know is that it is for them. It's not just for us, the viewers. It's for them, and it's just another way to do like we were saying, Gina, where we need to provide a means of standing up to the right however
Mm-hmm.
possible. And if we sit around waiting for funding, we're going to be waiting a long time,
Yeah.
apparently. And so we might as well start to do what everyone's recommending, organize and
Mm-hmm.
and get together and work together however possible in a supportive manner. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be very exciting. It's going to be creative. It's the kind of thing that will evolve and take on new dynamics, but only in a way that will help it grow. We're not
Mm-hmm.
looking to do any one thing, and if it doesn't work, that's that. Although,
Mm-hmm.
if we have to admit failure, okay, we wouldn't be the first ones to do that, but we've gotten a lot farther than anyone else ever has. And so that launches June 10th of this year, which is a Tuesday. So we're
Okay.
looking at Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We're doing like the midweek thing,
Okay.
and it's called This Space. And you can go, you can find that on YouTube now, or you can just go to thisspace.tv, and all the links that you'll need are there.
Okay. Perfect.
It's gonna be fun.
ThisSpace.tv.
Yeah, and we call it This
Okay.
Space because how people say watch this space, and
Oh,
people
yeah.
are always talking about like people in this space, and in this space you have to do
Mm-hmm.
this or that. And so I was like, we should just call it This Space. So that
Yeah.
was our
Yeah, that's
idea, and
good.
yeah, it's catchy already, so why not?
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you for letting
Yeah.
me promote it. It's like we've been
Oh, of
teasing it
course.
out here and there, and now we're gonna move into full on promotion. So
Yeah.
as much broadcasting we can do about it as possible is very much appreciated.
Very cool.
And
And
you
and
should
you
be a part of it. Anybody on the left, anyone making content the way we do, is absolutely welcome to get on board. I mean, there's always going to be opportunity. And if we branch out
mm,
I mean, just imagine if we were going 7 days a week, 24
yeah.
hours a day. Like,
Yeah.
I would have to stop doing a show on there so that somebody else could, right? It's
Yeah.
like, or we're going to have to join up and do more group panel shows where it's like an
Yeah.
open house. People just come and go as they have
Yeah, that would
availability.
be cool. That would be fun.
Yeah,
To be
anything's
like,
possible.
"Hey, I'm
It'd be fun.
here," and then like, "Okay, I got to go do my show. I'm checking out."
Exactly. Exactly. And it gives people
Yeah.
an opportunity to like have strength in numbers, but also like build off of each other's momentum. Like just think
Mhm.
right now, I'm on YouTube. Well, when my show's over, everyone splinters and goes off to find a new show. What if you could just
Mhm.
stay put and the next person comes on and
Mhm.
that benefits the audience? But what if that person is like way more good successful at this? They've been doing it 10 or
Mhm.
15 years longer than I have. Well, people are going to come hang out at my show because they know who's coming on next. And likewise,
Mhm.
who's coming on after them. And so it
Right.
really does help build off each other's momentum while
Mhm.
giving the audience a central place to just hang out and be on the left. And of
Mhm.
course, if there's opportunities to cover elections or promote movements and actions and candidates or boycotts, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna utilize this platform to do that. So it could
Yeah,
be
very cool.
in a lot of ways more than just entertainment, but it's definitely
Mm-hmm.
going to be entertaining. It's definitely going to be fun to watch.
Very cool. Can you share any names of I know one who's on board. I don't know if you're allowed to.
Oh, Benjamin P. Dixon is definitely on board. I'm on board,
Mm.
if that matters. Andrea Rovinsky is on board. Andrea Rovinsky is a very popular lefty live streamer and speed runner. Do you know what speed running is, Gina? It's when you
No.
play a video game as fast as possible.
Oh, okay.
He holds like world records
I was
in
like,
some of
isn't
these.
running speed or like isn't aren't
It's
you
it's
aren't you already like moving fast when you're running? Like,
being able to beat a video game in, and believe me, I'm like I said, I'm 50 years old. I don't really get it, but there's a huge audience for this, and Andrea is a master at it. She's also very good at
yeah.
organizing and scheduling behind the scenes. So we're getting a lot of action on that front. And yeah, I don't. It is too early to start rolling it out, although we are only a few weeks away. So people
Yeah.
should tune in. It's going to be good. It's going to be good.
Very cool. And what time will it kick off on the 10th?
We're planning on a kickoff show in the afternoon, probably like 2 or 3. Really, the
Okay.
best way to follow us on social media, and we'll definitely be posting about it, and all the people involved will be posting about it. So it's going to be
Okay.
broadcast far and wide. But as more people sign up, we could change things. So that afternoon deal may be in the morning. I don't know, but
Okay.
I mean, there in theory, if everything
Hmm.
goes right, there'll never be a wrong time to tune in.
Okay. It sounds like a lot of fun. It sounds like
Yeah,
something very interesting and like, yeah, could bring out some really interesting content.
I
Because
think so. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. We
yeah, because
have
I mean, there's a difference. I mean, you know what I mean when you go on a show and you're there, just for 15 minutes or 30 minutes. It's like you got to hit all your points and
right.
whatever topic you're talking about. But as start to just flow, go with the flow of the conversation like we have today, I mean, you veer
Mhm.
off to a lot of different things. That's
Yeah,
why Rogan has been so popular.
right. But there's
So,
there's no threat that you and I aren't going to be inclusive, right? Or that
right.
somebody's going to slip and use a slur or something like that. Like that's
Yeah,
not,
yeah.
so we're counting on this space being as cool and inclusive and
Mhm.
accessible as we possibly can make it,
Yeah.
with the idea that we're always willing to improve on that front and
Mhm.
correct behavior and language. And like I said, you don't have to debate everything, but if
Mhm.
you are going to debate, it should be in an open-minded way and as much about making
Yeah.
your case as hearing somebody else's points.
Yeah.
That's what we want
Well,
to
yeah,
do.
I mean, it's like in any relationship, if you automatically shut the other person down and
Right.
what they're saying, then there is no conversation. They're just going to walk away. They're just going to go, well, you're not hearing me. You're not
Yeah.
considering what I'm saying. So why should I even bother to keep talking?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So,
it's
yeah,
easy.
a,
It's
a
just
lesson the Democrats, the Democratic establishment
hope so.
needs to learn.
It's crazy they haven't already. I can't figure that
Yeah,
out. It's
I
like,
know.
how many times are you gonna have just L after L after L and no W's?
Yeah.
Like, come on,
Well, this
really?
is what I feared. I feared Biden winning in 2020, I think sent the wrong message to not just the Democratic establishment, but also Democratic voters, because the Democratic establishment and their mainstream media cohorts push the idea that, well, see, we just had to go with a middle of the road. We had to go with a centrist. We had to go with someone who was safe. Biden was the only one who could win against Trump.
Yeah,
I think it's the opposite. I think anyone could have won in 2020 because the Donald Trump 1.0 experience was so horrific, and especially coming off of the whole stop the steal election fraud BS. and
Mail
January
in
6th,
be-
so soon
because
after
of
that.
because of COVID, there was a lot of mail-in voting going on. Like that was
Mm-hmm.
greater than ever, which is why Trump was so freaked out about it and saying like it
Yeah.
was. I lived in Boulder, Colorado, Boulder County, Colorado at the time, which has one of the
Mm-hmm.
best mail-in voting systems around. I think all other
Mm-hmm.
states should try and adopt that model.
Yeah, we
And
have a great one here too.
he
I
was
mean,
saying they
it's
were the most corrupt. And I was like,
yeah,
he's obviously saying that because that's going to be a big deal this time around. And it was. So,
yeah,
like, anybody could have won that race. But I
yeah,
just wish we got somebody more worthwhile.
yeah. And that's my fear for this next presidential election
Yeah.
because things are so bad with Donald Trump in office
Blue, no
now,
matter who.
and it's going to get even worse as time progresses and as these horrific financial decisions he's making start to proliferate. And we see just layoffs and closures and all of the carnage that he's creating right now. I think as that all unfolds, I think again, we're going to be in a situation in 2028 where people are like, I don't care who it is, I don't care what they espouse, I don't, let's just get get a Democrat. And so I'm fearful, they're going to play this same stupid crap of, oh, we gotta go with a centrist. We gotta, try to get those moderates, those anti-Trump Republicans. And it's like we're going to be right back in the same situation. That is my
Yeah.
fear.
That makes President John Stewart not look so bad. But still, I
Yeah,
I wish there was somebody else out there who was more of a community organizer and less of a comedian personality, a celebrity.
yeah. I don't. Yeah, I think he's a good mix.
It could
More
be
so,
worse for
more
sure.
more
Yeah.
so than a McConaughey or a or a Rock. I think that he definitely, um, because he's not just a comedian. I mean, he is funny on
Right.
his show, but yeah,
And
he's
he isn't like just critical of Democrats. He's not just critical of Republicans. He's critical.
yeah,
I think that's what
yeah,
counts. And like you look at somebody like how AOC had people who voted for her voted for Trump.
mm-hmm,
If that's not evidence that people are looking for something that matters versus
right,
appeals, I don't know
yep,
what is.
yep. Yeah, so true because that focus group I was listening to last night, there was one guy who was just, I mean, he was maddening for me because he was just so on board with Donald Trump and, what he's doing. And, there was a question of, do you think that Donald Trump is focusing and making it a priority to bring down inflation? This guy said yes. And when the moderator pressed him on it and said, okay, well, what evidence do you have? What has Donald Trump done that makes you think he's focusing on the economy and inflation? He couldn't come up with an answer. His answer
Huh.
was, well, because he told me he is. That was literally his answer, is because
Right.
he said he is, so I think he must be doing it. I mean, I just wanted to scream. Oh, I did scream.
I
I
don't
was
know how
like,
you do it. I
yeah.
do you get
Oh,
the impression that the focus group people like I don't know if there's like a percentage or all of them or just one of them, but like they feel like they have to answer, like they're in a focus group, so they have to like contribute or go
no,
along with
because they'll
whatever.
typically call on them. So I do see a lot of followers in these focus groups. Like I will always pick up on at least one or two people who you can tell have no opinions of their own, and they're
Hmm.
just trying to like fit in with what the majority of the rest of the group
Ah,
is saying. It's so obvious. Like there was definitely one that I picked off last night. And I've gotten really good at knowing exactly who is watching Fox News almost exclusively.
oh wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I was
That's
like,
cool. You're
okay.
honing skills.
Oh yeah. I'm looking at the boxes on the screen. I'm like, okay, Fox, 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 nothing. and I was,
Wow.
and when they went through and they asked them, okay, what is your media diet? What do you watch or listen to? Nailed it. I
There it
was like,
is.
wow, I'm getting good at this. I can tell who doesn't watch anything, who watches
Well,
Fox exclusively, who
I
has more of a, middle of the road, like I watch a little of everything kind of media diet.
I
But
got to thank you for your service though, because I'm not sitting through that stuff. I really do appreciate you
thanks.
doing that and putting the videos out there on our behalf.
You're welcome. Well, this guy, what I was leading up to is he was so on board with Donald Trump, and again, just believes him with no evidence. But yet, when they asked him, they asked another question: are you going to, in the midterms, do you plan on voting specifically for candidates who support Donald Trump's agenda? Will you consider voting for people who oppose Donald Trump's agenda, or have you not really made up your mind? This guy was like, even though he's so on board with Trump, he was like, yeah, I don't know. I'll figure it out when I get there,
So
because
annoying.
I just don't make my decisions that way. I go based on their policies and whether or not I like them. And so you don't know.
Wow.
We can't
That
pigeonhole people.
I can't believe that. And this was a focus group like from like current,
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah, they
within the
just did it
last
this week.
100 and 200 days.
Yeah, no, they
Wow.
they just conducted
Wow.
it this week. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that's got to be such a small percentage of people out there right now doing. I can see how people
Yeah.
would throw their hands up and be like, "I'm to here with all this. I don't believe in any of this. None of this is all scripted and fake and phony. I don't believe it." But like to
Mm,
say like you're undecided, that
yeah.
seemed outrageous. I don't know who could be undecided at this point.
Well, like I said, you
Like
could
about what?
tell that these people are not paying attention to politics.
Yeah,
Like
but like how can you not be picking it up in the peripheral? Like how it it's all that's happening. How can you be so checked out? I don't know. I guess
yeah,
it's possible to live in a cave and never come out, but like,
yeah.
you know, just
I
metaphorically
think, I mean,
speaking,
if you
but
never watch the news,
there's people.
if
I
you
have
if you just don't
neighbors.
watch the news, or you stay in your own little bubble and you're only
I
getting
met
spoon fed
people.
what they want you to see and hear.
One thing about moving to the South in the United States is you realize people don't talk about politics because they don't have
Mm,
to. Everyone is on the same page.
yeah.
But every now and then I would meet neighbors where I was like, I can tell you're cool. I can tell you have good politics, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they would still make a point of saying, because they don't know about me, I'm new
Mm-hmm.
here. I'm not from here. They would say, I don't talk politics. That's all they want to talk about right now. You catch
Mm,
somebody in the front yard, that's all we're talking about. You catch somebody at the grocery store, that's
yeah.
all anybody wants to talk about right now, for better or worse.
Yeah.
I came upon some cashiers at Walmart, and
Mm-hmm.
it was one cashier trying to tell two other coworkers about this was like last September. And she was saying, y'all better vote. You got to get out there and vote. This matters. And they were like, does it? I don't really know. I don't like either candidate. And it was my turn in line. They said, sorry, we shouldn't be talking about this in front of customers. And I was like, by all means, these conversations are necessary. And my advice would be vote in the primary election so that you have a say in who you vote for in the general. Don't just wait
Mm-hmm.
for the general and vote
Yeah.
for the lesser of two evils. And they were like, what are the primaries? And I said, I'm so glad you asked.
Yeah.
And, I started to explain it to them. I told them it's a very small town. I said, you go on this street, that corner, that's the building where you register, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
just told them, or find out your voting location. I could tell them everything in the moment. That's one person talking to two people. A fourth person showed up. I'm just thinking of the ripple effect,
Yeah.
right? And so it's really important to keep promoting the fact that we have options, and if we don't, we ought to, right?
Yeah.
That is a big deal. And there's never a time where you shouldn't volunteer that information. And if that's talking about politics, okay. To me, it's more like talking about how democracy works,
Mm-hmm.
which is not dirty politics or shameful politician
Yeah.
drama,
No.
right? It's talking about how the system works. And if you're
Yeah.
so dissatisfied with it that you're checking out, your involvement could improve it.
Yeah.
And I just hope you know how, because it seems like you might not. And so please ask. Ask me
Yeah.
anything, stranger. I'll
No,
tell you whatever.
there are so many people who just don't literally don't know what's going on. I came across a Reddit post where someone was because I lurk over there to find my a lot of my content for
Okay.
the
Yeah.
FAFO videos.
Uh-huh.
But there was one person who small business owner, I think it was, and they posted a receipt, like a DHL receipt, showing this huge tariff fee that they had. And they were asking the group, hey, does this sound reasonable to you guys? Like, does this seem like it's logical? And like, why would they be charging me this? And if everybody just piled on in the comments and was saying, like, yeah, you can thank Trump for this. And this person responded and said, well, I don't want to get political. I don't want to talk politics. I'm just asking for some advice here, blah, blah, blah. I'm not into politics. And it's like, I responded to the person, said, well, if you were into politics, you would know this is a legitimate fee because of Donald Trump's
Right.
tariffs. That's the point everybody's trying to make to you, is that
Yeah.
you can try to check out on politics, but it is going to affect your life. So you
Right.
should probably pay attention.
Yeah. And the longer you go without participating in democracy, the more
Yeah.
it's not going to work in your favor. And guess what? That goes for all of us. So thanks for nothing, buddy. But like, we should be, I don't believe in like voter shaming. I'd
Mm,
rather it be voter educating. But like, at some point, we're going to have to be like, hey, man, choose a side
yeah.
and then vote. Like
Yeah.
this sitting it out is like a huge part of the problem. And
Yeah.
I get that there are protest votes and those should work on politicians, but the fact is the politicians are too useless for it to work. And so
Yeah.
like we need to remember that those folks are on our side, but continue to educate the people who are, I think it was like 90 million people who sat out the last
Hmm.
election. Like, come on. We don't need
Yeah.
all of you even, but if we had all of you, real game changer, especially in the primaries, because like I think it's a third of people who vote in the general vote in the primaries, maybe less. That to me is startling because why would you show up to the Super Bowl without watching the playoffs? I guess people
Yeah.
do it, but now imagine that whoever wins the Super Bowl decides your very like survival.
Yeah. But
And
like you said, there are so many people who don't even understand the process.
right.
It's
Yeah,
why
yeah.
so many
What are
people,
primaries?
I think it's why we have so many people who flip flop and do this. Oh, I'm a swing voter because they literally don't understand how things happen in this country. They don't understand that you have to have a certain majority to pass certain things. They'll go, oh, well, Democrats had control of everything, like I was saying earlier, and they didn't get anything done. And it's like, okay, but you have to have a certain number of votes to get things done. And then you have certain Democrats that are kind of Democrats in name only, or they're in districts where they're not going to take that tough vote and vote with the rest of their Democratic colleagues because in their district they're trying to pander to the right.
Yeah, and
So
If Democrats didn't get so much done, like on the one hand, they should have been bragging a lot more about
mm,
accomplishments, and they just didn't. I don't
yeah,
understand that, and I never will. But like, if they didn't get so much done, how is there so much to undo?
yeah,
Right? And
true.
like
It's
maybe a
very
lot of
true.
what they got done was leaving things alone
Hmm.
or not creating all these new initiatives, but preserving things they could have done more. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But like to be able to come in and just destroy programs and take away funding and
Hmm.
prop up the rich over and over and over again, it was a little too easy for them to
Yeah.
do. But just look at the way. Why
Well,
would Trump need so many executive orders and so many presidential actions if the Democrats had just been sitting around letting things fall apart?
yeah.
I don't get it.
Very true. And it's so much easier always to do demolition than it is to rebuild.
Yeah, and probably fun, but
Yeah. Oh,
that's
yeah.
not the
Swinging
world
a
we should live in.
sledgehammer at a
Yeah.
wall.
Yeah.
Taking it down, way
Yeah.
more fun than trying to build that house
Carpentry.
back.
Yeah, that's like now there's math and we have to double check everything
Yeah,
and have inspections and regulation. And it'd be so much more fun to just get rich off of, other people's poverty and toxic waste and
yeah,
sludge and pollution and it's gross.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
We got
know.
to keep fighting. I always say I don't fight to win, I fight to fight because I
Yeah.
believe I'm planting trees whose shade I will never take advantage of. That's for the next
Mm-hmm.
generation. But if I
Yeah.
can show people how to fight, then I'm willing to do that by just putting up my dukes
Yeah.
until I call it.
Yeah. So bottom line is Democrats need to get out of their heads, get in more to the heart space,
Have
get,
policy, stand for
reach
something.
people on an emotional level, not this, oh, we're so logical, we're the intellectuals. They just got to get real, got to get more authentic. Um,
Less
and
Republican.
yeah, stop pandering to the right, stop
Yeah.
moving to the right to try to
Yeah.
win people back.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, just stop trying to create people in a lab.
And if you're
Stop.
looking for podcasters, here we are, but
Yeah,
be prepared to take criticism. If you
yeah,
want to pay podcasters,
yeah,
don't pay them to, follow the party line. Pay
yeah.
them to be real.
Well,
And I mean, if you
and
want the
go on the
votes, that's how you do
shows.
it.
I mean, I
Go on the
heard
shows.
Crystal Ball saying recently that they invite Democratic politicians
Oh
on the
yeah.
show all the time, and they don't go. They
Right.
just refuse to do it. And I
Yep.
think, yeah, it's because they are afraid of difficult conversations. So,
Yeah. It's easier to cower, I guess. Yeah.
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
shame.
Or,
Crystal Ball
I
is
mean,
one of the good
they
ones.
they go on where they're going to get a softball question here and there and a lot of fluff. Um, it's sad because, yeah, I mean, you got to test your mettle. That I think that we would have been in a much better position if we had had primaries in 2024 and if we could have tested Biden's mettle.
Oh
If we
yeah.
could have had him up there debating people, we would have seen the meltdown that we eventually saw in the debate with Donald Trump, his whole Mitch McConnell freeze frame. So
Mitch McConnell's still in office. Leave that. And like I said, I don't
crazy.
like to voter shame, but who is reelecting these guys? There's no other
I know.
options out there. Are you kidding me? Come
I
on.
know.
It's really
I know.
bad.
Well, but again, it's a guy who's willing to break the rules, who's willing to play dirty to give his constituents what they want. And that's,
He might not
what
even.
Democrats are unwilling to do is
Yeah.
like they're such rule followers and oh we got to do things the right way and say things the right way and we can't curse and we can't do this and we can't do that and it's like stop thinking about what you can't do and start thinking about what you can do.
Play hardball.
Yeah.
Get pissed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stop being
Yeah.
nice to
Yeah.
the other
This
side.
if there was ever a time to break the rules and go for the jugular, this is it. Like our democracy, our country is literally on the line at this point.
Yeah. I mean, you could be the bigger person all you want, but let me know when you want to win
Yeah.
elections
Yeah. Yeah. No,
or a
I mean,
majority.
I've said, I've dealt with bullies my entire life because, and they were in my house. Dealt with a father who was a horrific bully and very violent and sociopathic almost and
Mm.
narcissistic. And you don't deal with those people by trying to reason with them, you know?
Right. And at some point, it's like, I'm galvanized. I'm going to stand up to this.
Yeah.
Like there comes a point where it's like, really, are you going to keep doing this over and over again and expect me to just keep taking it? That's not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
Especially
can
if it's your
honestly say,
job.
yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I was I was the only person in the house that my dad was actually kind of afraid of because I
Nice.
I was willing to out crazy him.
I can
but
see that.
that is the only way. That's the only way you can get through to people like that. Like that's the only thing that they respect.
You
So,
say, "Oh, we're all allowed to yell." Oh, okay.
oh
I
yeah,
didn't realize that.
yeah, yeah. It wasn't just yelling. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, we can all
no,
throw stuff? Great.
yeah, no. I had to save my mother once.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he had been holding her with a knife all day at he they owned a deli and
And you intervened?
yeah, it was my day off.
Wow.
I was working for them at the deli and it was my day off and she called and she was crying and my mother never cried. Never ever saw or heard my mother cry. And I was, old enough to drive at that point, but I was still a teenager. But yeah, I took off in the car. He had left her for a minute to go up to deal with a customer. And yeah, he had been holding her with a knife, had her in a corner, sitting on a chair, threatening her.
That is
And
intense.
yeah, and so I walked in. I'm like, "Get up, we're leaving." And he tried to posture. And my dad was a big guy. He was like 6'1", at his heaviest 360 pounds.
Wow.
So not, and that at that point, I'm still small, but at that point I was, 5'3", 95 pounds, wet, soaking wet. Um, but yeah, I was not going to leave without my mom. So there were knives pulled. He got in front of my car and I gassed it. And I was like, we're leaving.
That's
So
awesome. We that is heroic. We need see, you hope that people don't have to go through that, but when they do,
yeah.
that's a transformational experience. That's something that helps you realize I've unlocked abilities, right? It's
Hmm.
courage or
Yeah.
uh, a degree of defiance that is very necessary. You would hope that more people have those moments and use it to fight for others. Like I get the impression that you do your show because you're standing up for people,
Yeah.
because you're promoting things that would enrich people's lives. You're not doing this because you're going to make a bunch of money off it and then shift to the right and triple
Yeah.
your profits or anything like that, and then
No. Yeah. No.
work as the Donald Trump press secretary or something like that. Like, you
Yeah.
see these paths people go on and you just realize, like, they're just playing along. You've never really stood up to anybody, which is what
Yeah.
makes a bully a bully. It's somebody who's just doing what happened to them. But you seem like a champion to me. I appreciate that.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, no, I do it because I'm very opinionated, as I'm sure anybody can tell. But yeah,
Not a
I
bad
felt
thing.
like
Yeah.
during the first administration, I I didn't have my show and I was just like going insane, and at that time I was working in the alternative health sphere and I'd written my book and I was speaking at vegan events and so forth. And it just felt like, yeah, I'm helping people. I definitely, felt like I was doing that. And did a 2-day health conference that literally transformed some lives. I got feedback from some people
Oh, wow.
afterwards that was literally like one of our volunteers, her father came. I allowed volunteers to bring a guest and probably saved his life, literally. The doctor had told him he needed surgery. They were going to have to, cut open his chest and like his heart was barely working, like 10-15% capacity. So he had a complete health turnaround because of it. So I felt like I was doing good, but then the world's falling apart around us. I mean, everything is
Yeah.
just going to hell, and
Well, you can't
Donald
save
Trump is
everybody.
destroying the country, and then the lockdowns happened, and there wasn't a lot going on with the vegan movement, and I just felt like I got to do something. I've got to I got to get a voice out there to try to bring to light information. Um, and to be fair, I'm someone who believes in fairness, and being honest above all else. I mean, that's something that anybody you talk to in my life, that's one of the main things that I'm known for, is that Gina's going to tell you the truth. If you want to know the truth, go ask her because she will tell you if your butt looks big in that. you
Honest
know.
to a fault.
But no, honesty to me is like the end all be all.
Yeah.
It's like if I can't trust someone, we're done.
Yeah. No,
So
same. Yeah. It's
yeah,
a big
and
deal.
I just feel like that's that's all we have. Like if you can't be trusted to tell the truth, then what are you? Who are you? Nobody knows.
And where do you go if how do you build up um you have no comrades if they can't rely on you, right? You have no
Mm-hmm.
allies
Yeah.
if you're not worth fighting for, if you don't fight for people. It needs to be mutual. That's why they call it mutual aid, right? It's everyone needs to be supporting support me because I support people.
Mm-hmm.
Support you because you're supporting people. We're speaking out for things that matter and we're trying to be fair. And
Right.
like, if I'm not doing a purely political show, my politics. If
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about something like, oh, tonight I'm going to talk about an artist or tonight I'm going to talk about a movie, that I'm talking about it in that context
Mm-hmm.
and that I'm not suddenly running cover for a lack of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's as honest as people can possibly be, where you're known for talking about politics, and if you talk about anything else, people will say, well, no, I already have trust and respect for this person's point of view. I might not agree with their taste in pop culture, but I know that they're not going to start coming at me from an all new place and
Right.
or perspective. So that does
Yeah.
build trust, and so that's why I never hesitate to change my topics here and there. Like tonight, I talk about um, comic books, right? I'm running an
Mm-hmm.
interview of a guy who is a legendary underground comic book creator,
Oh,
also First Amendment activist, created the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund to
oh, very
protect
cool.
people's First Amendment rights and freedom of speech. And yeah, so it's like, if somebody's like, I don't want to look at comics, okay, but there's going to be an
Yeah.
angle here. You know that my politics are way too strong and
Mm-hmm.
sure-footed for me to stray even a little bit. So
Mm-hmm.
everyone benefits all the time, but yeah, you can't do that without trust and
Yeah.
honesty. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
And that's the thing. I can deal with someone who maybe we don't agree on every single topic if I know that they are an honest, genuine person. If I know
Oh
that
yeah.
their heart's in the right place, they're a good person. I have a lot of people in my family who voted for Trump, and some that are very, very much, Trump supporters. They just did, some of them, like they don't pay much attention to politics. So, they just kind of
Yeah.
vote the way their husband does or their friends do. Others that are very much MAGA and all in on the whole Trump train thing. Others that it's just for financial reasons. They just want the tax breaks. They're wealthy. Um, and how I feel about them has to do with who they are, not their vote. You
I
know,
see.
if they have always been good to me, they've been good to my kids. I know their true heart. I know that they're a genuine, honest, decent person who just is, not not informed.
Yeah,
Sadly, they're just
I
uninformed.
I always talk about my right wing neighbor. I had a right wing neighbor for a long time, and people thought he wasn't real, but he's a real person. Um, 100% Donald Trump supporter, said only president we ever had who did everything he said he was going to do. And I was like,
Oh
yeah, but
my
we didn't want
God.
him to do that stuff anay. So like, and you're wrong, but
Yeah,
like,
and that's not true.
yeah, he said he was going to build the wall and he built the wall. And it was like, we didn't want the wall. So, but he didn't really finish it anyway. So anyhow, But that guy would drop everything for his entire city, for
Mm,
everyone in the town. He would go to town halls and rail against the city council
mm-hmm,
on behalf of everybody. And
mm,
that was something, that was an argument that I used against him, was like, how are you this guy and that
yeah,
guy?
yeah.
It's like when I say, isn't it funny to think about how like hardcore right wingers also like Star Trek? How? How do are we watching the same show? Who do you think the bad guys are? I'm just curious,
Yeah,
like how does this work in your mind? Because for
yeah,
me, I'm seeing like a utopia where everyone benefits from everyone and a lot of diversity.
mm-hmm,
What are you watching, right? So
yeah,
are you rooting for the bad guys or what? Like it doesn't make sense. And so I think it's
yeah,
easy to like I guess I'm popular for saying exploiting the fractures and the cracks and in a way that makes sense, not in a way that is shaming, but like at the
mm-hmm,
same time, people have to know like if you voted for this guy, like you're doing a lot of bad to a
yeah,
lot of people and it's not fair and it's probably selfish and like I'm not going to hold back in telling somebody that, but maybe the way to get through is to find the things in their life that doesn't make sense. Like you voted for AOC and Trump, huh? Huh. Tell me about that because those things do
mm,
not line up. Oh, for
yeah,
you personally. Oh, okay. Well, let's look at this
mm,
more broadly, right? Because they are totally opposed when it comes to policy. It doesn't make any
mm-hmm,
sense, really.
yeah,
But I don't know. It's what makes it complex, but it's also what makes it worth discussing.
yeah. And I think a lot of people want to tell instead of ask.
Oh,
And
definitely.
what I mean by that is I think you can get through to people a lot easier if you bring out the the information from them. If you are inquisitive and you ask questions and let them come to the realization on their own. There's a saying in marketing that if I say it, it's my opinion. But if I can
Okay.
get you to say it, it's a fact. So
Oh,
it's so much more beneficial and more
that's good.
effective if you can get someone to come to a realization on their own just by asking them questions and having the light bulb kind of go off in their own head.
Huh.
Because otherwise, it comes across as you lecturing and telling them what they should think and what they should feel.
Yeah.
I had a guy who came over. We had a reek. We had a roof leak. I combined the
Oh,
two
they should call them
words.
reeks.
We
Yeah.
had a reek. That's a new word for a roof leak. Anyway,
That's awesome.
this guy comes over. He starts talking to me after he fixed the roof. He goes, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" And I'm always like, afraid to tell people because you don't know what their politics are going to be. And
Yeah.
I'm in an area where it's like probably about 50-50 Republican, Democrat. And so I said, I host a YouTube show. Oh, really? What's it about? I'm like, oh, shit. I was hoping he wasn't going to ask
Yeah.
that question.
I've been there. Yeah.
So I'm like, well, it's news and politics. He goes, oh, really? And I said, yeah. I go, but I'm very progressive. So if you're a conservative, or especially if you're a Donald Trump supporter, you wouldn't like it. And he goes, well, I am a Trump supporter. I did vote for him, but I'm very open minded. I'm very fair, and I like to hear both sides of things. And I go, oh, okay, well, that's good. I'm that way too. I call out my own side when they're doing something wrong or unethical. And
That's
he's
the
like,
key. You
oh,
got to point that out.
yeah, yeah. And he's like, oh, well, that's good to know. He's like, oh, I would want to check that out then. And I'm like, all right. So we get to talking, and Jim Jordan comes up, and this guy knew
Okay.
nothing about what Jim Jordan was about. And so
Oh,
I kind of filled him in. And what I what I ended up saying to him was, which I could see it in his face, the wheels turning. I said, I just know that there's so many good and decent people out there like you who, if you knew the truth about what the Republicans were doing, you would totally be against it. And he didn't answer me. But again, I could see it all over his face. Like he was really thinking about that statement. And so you just have to plant those seeds and hope that they grow.
Is
Be-
there sometimes I'm worried about telling people they don't see the truth. Sometimes I say there's not enough transparency on that side. There's not
well,
enough, like, they're telling you what you want to hear. Do you like your handheld like that? Shouldn't you
mhm.
be telling them? I don't know.
Well, what I
But
told
I'm glad you
him,
got through.
yeah, what I told him and what I think made a difference was that just as we on the left aren't told the whole complete truth about
Yeah.
everything about our side
Yeah.
from our media, they're not told the truth. And,
Oh, absolutely. It
and
is
so
worth pointing out. Yeah.
yeah, I think when you acknowledge something that the other person is feeling and thinking,
Yeah.
it allows them to drop their guard a little bit. It allows them to go, okay, this is an honest person. This is somebody who gets it, who sees it, and is not just, I'm right, you're wrong.
But I love telling people that I don't like Joe Biden either.
Yeah.
I love saying that. Like,
Yeah.
so many people are like, you Biden supporters. And I go, whoa, excuse me. Just because I didn't vote for Trump doesn't mean I'm a Biden supporter. I voted for
Yeah.
him because I don't want Trump to be president. It doesn't mean that I just voted for Biden and say, well, I'm done here.
Right.
Everything's going to be
Right.
fine. That is not the world we live in. We have to stay engaged. These people, who hires employees and then walks away? Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
know we're hiring somebody to be more than an employee, but they do work for us. We have to
Mm-hmm.
keep checking in. And there's things people do in Congress that would have got them fired from a regular job on the spot, and that doesn't seem to apply. And that
Yeah.
is a real problem. So, like, you could always say, "Are you really okay with Trump having all these like power?" Because look, it's like this: either people are being lied to or they don't care that they're being lied to. Like,
Yeah.
or like during the election, I was like, wow, okay, so either this is pretty close. I don't like that. So either like people are being duped or there's a good part of the country that wants it this way.
Yeah.
I don't understand that, but
Well, I
to
think
me
it too
it
goes
is
back to what I
toxic.
was saying earlier that they're willing to accept some of the lies and some of the nefarious activity and the dirty tricks and maybe
Right.
even some breaking of laws if it's going to help them. And that's the problem with our system where so many people are so desperate because they are willing to accept anything to just for their little few scraps that they can get. It's like I get that he's a liar, I get that he's a cheater, I get that he's unethical and has broken laws and violated a woman, but I can't feed my kids,
Right.
and that comes first.
That's why
So
if the Democrats would just stand for something, if they would just
yeah.
start promoting all these very popular policies that they call progressive, if they
Yeah.
would just start standing up for these things in the way that, like a new economic bill of rights or something like that, like
Yeah.
start talking about making things more accessible and affordable, but not skimping on quality.
Mhm.
How can you lose? How
Yeah.
can you lose unless people outright go, that's a line. That's
Yeah.
BS. I don't believe them. How can you lose? I don't get it. And like
Yeah.
when people go, Pete Buttigieg sounding very presidential, what is he running on? What,
Mm.
why? You don't sound presidential for not sounding like a moron.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But like, what, like, at least we know what John Stewart could potentially run on, right?
Yeah.
We've seen him hold people accountable.
Right. We
Like,
know we know what he stands for. We know what
right.
he cares about. We know what he's willing to fight for and who he's willing to fight for. For him, it's not just about fame and being an attention whore or wanting to move ahead in politics. So I actually give a damn about this stuff.
I do like that he doesn't want to do it. That's a
Yeah.
good sign. That's a
Yeah.
really
Oh
good
yeah, no,
sign.
he's been fighting it. He keeps saying he doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to do it. So
It's going to be him and Bill Burr as his running mate.
yeah,
And
that
eh,
would be a great
they're
ticket.
going to
Can you
get
imagine
90% of the vote.
Bill Burr and Jon Stewart? That would be like a dream
People are going to
ticket.
like give him a third and fourth term. This is working.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Bill
love
Burr
the,
out there just saying free
yeah,
Luigi.
right. Yeah. I love the way they're so outspoken. Like, if you like
Yeah,
outspoken, get ready because here it comes. That would
I
be
know.
excellent.
I know. Yeah. No, it's tough, but yeah, I agree with you on, making it clear that you you know that your side isn't 100% correct. Like with that guy, with the roofer that came over, I did mention to him that, I probably distrust Nancy Pelosi as much as you do, you know,
Oh, yeah.
because
Probably
and
more because you have the right reasons,
yeah,
right? Like, it's not this
yeah,
made up fiction. It's like,
right.
no, you really know why you should distrust them.
Yeah, it's not just because she's this, coastal elite lib, in San
See,
Francisco.
again,
It's
it's
for
like,
real reasons. It's because yeah, she does prevent our country from moving forward by pushing people like Hakeem Jeffries on us, who's just going to keep the status quo and the court toe the corporate line,
and
you
like
know.
her stock portfolio
Oh
is
yeah,
like
the
through the
insider
roof.
stock trading. I mean,
It's
yeah.
again, it's like it's funny how you can be on the same page with somebody, but for completely different reasons. It's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, we both don't like Nancy Pelosi, but it's not because I believe that, you know, she's practicing Satanism or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that's
Not because
not
she has
what's
young children in her basement that she's draining
right.
their blood. Right.
Plenty of
It's for
legitimate
real,
reasons
real
to,
reasons.
yeah, we can have real reasons. We don't need the fantasy, but that's what they
Yeah.
choose to go with, and I just don't get it. It's like the system has checkpoints. The system has, it can always be improved, and there should be constant improvement. But this
Mm,
system of democracy has things implemented that should be enacted to keep it pure is the wrong word, but keep it legitimate and not
hmm.
allow for people to stay in office forever because they're banking off it or
Right.
because their spouse is part of the military industrial complex or something, a weapons
Hmm.
manufacturer or whatever,
Yeah.
like, or in pharmaceuticals even. But like there has to be a way of holding everyone accountable by using what the system is already built to do instead of just saying like, no, these people, it's a cabal, they're
Hmm.
actually uh communism or something like that. It, look,
Yeah.
if Democratic Party was communist, let's go already. What are we
Yeah.
waiting for? Like, why
Right.
haven't they enacted that yet? I don't
Yeah.
understand. So
No,
these things are easy to take apart, but people don't.
yeah. I just wonder how many times the right is going to be wrong before they go,
That's the
oh, wait a minute. Like, oh, Obama's going to take away your guns. The Democrats are going to take away your guns. How many Democratic presidents have we had? Not a
when
single
are they going to do
one
it?
has tried to take people's guns away,
When are they going
you
to do it?
know?
Yeah, that's what
And,
I
and
mean.
that's the
What is
thing.
the policy they're proposing even? No one's
Yeah,
even put anything on the table really.
exactly. And that's the thing. I have primarily progressive beliefs and policies, but there are things that I agree with on the right. And it's funny because I went to a doctor's office once. I was talking with this nurse, and we got on different topics, and I forget what came up, something about health. And then it came up that I was a leftist, that I was progressive. And she was like, oh, that's funny because I'm listening to you talk. I couldn't really pin you
Yeah.
down. I couldn't tell if you were a Democrat or a Republican because you had thoughts on both sides of things. And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, that's a human being. Like
Yeah.
most
That's
human
why
beings don't fit neatly into a box,
I
you know?
believe that everyone who is falling for populist rhetoric is actually an undiscovered progressive. They don't even know it, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's what I
you're
was saying. It's
listening.
the new moderate
Yeah. Right.
because
Yeah,
it's like it
exactly.
is the
Yeah.
popular, most popular view
Yep.
of helping people, taking care of their needs, Medicare for all, or whatever version you want,
I've
free
heard
health care.
hardcore South Carolina Trump supporters say it used to be a community took care of itself. And I'm like, what? Hold on. And you don't like social? What do you think socialism is? Like,
Yeah.
hold on a second.
Yeah. I mean,
But
that's why
yeah,
so many Bernie people moved over to Trump, because
yeah,
they, again, falsely believed
he
that
would have
he
won.
was an outsider. He was anti establishment. He was a populist,
Bernie
even
would have
though
won.
he got in there and he didn't govern like a populist at all the first time. And now, I mean, he has a few little, nibbles around the edges with the no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, things like that. But yeah, for the most part, I mean, it's just,
I think Bernie
that's the
Sanders
window
would win
dressing.
now.
That's the cover so that people don't realize how much he's giving to the
Oh,
rich.
and saying one day we're gonna cut pharmaceutical prices, and the next day
Hmm.
saying I recommend that you guys do it voluntarily.
Yeah.
But people just run with he's cutting pharmaceutical. He said he
Yeah.
wants to do it. Really? He goes to Congress and says, "Hey guys, don't mess with Medicare." Really? Or Medicaid. Really? Like, do you think he believes that? I mean, what's going to
Yeah.
happen anyway? And if they do mess with Medicaid, what's he going to do about it? Is he going to get
Yeah.
upset? It's all
Yeah, I
just,
mean, they
it's
already
all
did. I
just
mean,
cover. Yeah, it's
all
all
this
just
new stuff in this
decoration.
bill is gonna
It all,
slash.
yep,
Estimates are between 7.5 and 13 million people
yep.
will lose their health care coverage based on what
It's
they
going to
just
be bad.
put through.
It's going to be bad.
But yeah, but this is the and I just did a show, I want to say maybe a week or two ago. There was this really fascinating poll that came out, that proved that the people who are least literate in politics, the people
Yeah.
who pay attention the least, they are Donald Trump supporters. And it's funny because you'll talk to them and they'll, oh no, I know everything. And they have really strong opinions. I mean, I see them in the focus groups. The ones who know the least have such strong opinions on stuff. And it's like, oh my God, like all these people in this focus group last night, not a single one, and it's only 12 people, it was two groups of six each, but out of 12 people, not a single one of them knew that the reason travel into the United States is dropping is because people are afraid to come here. Like
Right.
the moderator gave them all these facts, all these stats of travel from this country has dropped this much, travel from this country has dropped this much, so on and so forth. And then he asked the groups, why do you think that is? Not a single one said, well, because they're deporting people,
You'll
because
end up in
they're,
Venezuela. I
yeah,
mean,
because
nobody
they're
cares.
literally taking people and holding them hostage for 10 days, 2 weeks, months at a time when they've done nothing wrong. I mean, you had those two German teenagers that they snatched up in Hawaii and threw them out of the country. I
And they
mean,
didn't get this?
what was that?
The focus group didn't get it?
They had not one person. Now the moderator didn't bring it up. He didn't want to sway anybody or influence their
Okay.
opinion or thought. So he was just asking the question, why do you think that is? Not one out of the 12 mentioned any of these cases. No, it's like none of them knew.
Wow.
One said, "Oh, well, it's because, there's just so much unrest in the country because of the people on the left, because the Democrats are so upset about Donald Trump and Gaza and the Palestinians.
It
And
feels
so,
so
you know,
hopeless. Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
yeah. I mean, just
Wow.
clueless, absolutely clueless. A couple of them said, oh, maybe because of the tariffs, because, they're upset about the tariffs. The one guy who said, oh, it's because of the Democrats, because, all this violence from the left of all these demonstrations and protests. And the moderator kind of pushed him on, and he goes, well, weren't these demonstrations and protests going on last year? And he's like, yeah. He goes, so then why did the travel just drop this year? And he's like, well, it's gotten worse.
It's like that's confirmation bias, right? It's like,
Yeah.
so now that I've made my case, do you see? And they go, yeah,
Yeah.
I can see that I was right. It's
Yeah.
like you're just going to keep reworking it and adding plot twist to
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
until it suits your narrative.
Yeah.
But
They just move the goalposts and
I
bob
really
and
hope
weave.
that's the
Yeah. This
minority
is
of
the same
people
guy, though, who said that when they asked, do you think the economy is getting better? He said, yes. And he
right
said that,
now.
and yeah, and he said that prices are coming down. And he named a couple of things. Well, eggs in my area, eggs are coming down. And he named a couple of other things. And then the moderator asked a follow up question a few minutes later and said, who do you think is responsible for the economic conditions right now? Is it Biden or is it Trump? The same guy who said that everything's getting better right now said Biden is responsible for the economic conditions right now. And it's like, okay, so are you saying if I was the moderator, I would have said, but wait a minute, you said things are getting better. So are you saying Biden is making things better right now for you?
Yeah, okay, I get that it's a focus group, but somebody needs to stand up and say, we are all dumber in here for having listened to you talk today, sir. You are a moron. You have no idea. I don't care if you believe this or not. It needs to be said. You have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You are completely out of touch.
Yeah.
Please do better.
No, I
Get
can
a
always tell
newspaper.
like they're like so many of them are just not the brightest bulbs. And so,
Diversify where you're getting your news from because this is
yeah.
not working for you and you are affecting too many lives.
Yeah.
And I would
Needless to
talk to
say, he
them
is
all the
a
way out the
Fox
door.
News viewer.
Yeah.
Like
Oh, I'm sure.
that's
Yeah.
all he ever, well, he did say he watches some things on YouTube, but just Fox News was his
I
primary
mean,
source.
I think that most cable media is state propaganda. And if you're state propaganda, you must be the state, right, itself. But
Hmm.
like that stuff has been exposed as propaganda for decades, for a
Yeah.
long time. And
Yeah.
they were in court as saying, no, we're just entertainment. This isn't real.
Yeah.
Like, and people are like, they had to say that. Keep
Yeah.
going.
Well, I mean,
It's
you would
endorphins.
think
That's all it is.
after having to pay almost $800
That's the
million
thing.
dollars
Yeah.
for lying to their audience, you would think that that would erode some of the trust in Fox News and wake some people up. But here's the thing, I guarantee if you asked 10 hardcore MAGA supporters about that case, I guarantee that they either had never heard about it or they thought that Dominion lost. Because I have had Trump supporters leave comments saying, "Oh, well, yeah, they won, Dominion lost. They got their asses kicked in court." And it's like, put the crack pipe down. Like, where are you living? What planet are you living on?
It's not normal. It's I somebody needs to confront them in an uncomfortable way. Somebody needs to tell them you are not normal. Just so you
Yeah.
know, this isn't
Yeah.
real. You're living in a story time.
Yeah, it's like it literally is like an alternate universe.
I would,
It's
yeah,
insane.
I forget what movie it was, but there was like a debate. I think it was like an Adam Sandler movie, and the debate moderator said something like, "You're completely wrong. That
Oh
was the
yeah.
exact wrong answer, and we are all dumber for having listened to you say
Yeah.
it." That needs to be. That would
Yeah.
be good journalism at this point, where people are like, "Oh, hold on, I'm not going to let you finish, Congressman. We're cutting you off." And
Yeah.
then tell everyone for the next 20 minutes about how much of a moron that guy is and how you shouldn't vote for him instead of just being like, well, we need access to Congress. No, you need to hold them accountable. You need to make them look like
Hmm.
idiots that they are. That's that simple.
Yeah.
I mean, who are you doing this for? The congressmen or the voters, the
Yeah.
population? Like, give me a
Well,
break.
that's about their access. They don't want to lose access, so they don't want to take too
That's
tough of a stance,
That's lame. That is
Yeah.
lame. I mean, I know how that is. People will tell me, "Oh, if you have so and so on, you gotta hold them accountable and rail against them. And I go, but that's not really what my show does. So that would be weird to
Mhm.
do that. But I will give them an opportunity to not just do more of their thing, whatever
Mhm.
their content is. I'm going to ask
Mhm.
them how they make it, why they make it. And the interviews are informed by the previous responses from previous interviews in a way
Mhm.
that might make them think of that moment or think of that question and how they answered it when they go on to do their show or
Mhm.
their form of journalism or whatever. There are ways to get through to people without being confrontational, but then there's just a time to be
Yeah.
like I
Yeah, you
emailed
just
somebody
you
back
gotta throw
and
the
said,
bullshit flag at certain
well,
points.
so I emailed you inviting you to come on the show. I assumed you thought that was a pretty straightforward, if not pleasant interaction, right?
Mhm.
But there were times where at least one time where I circled back with somebody and said, you know what, I'm not going to be able to do the interview I offered you. It's not going to be the same. I don't agree with you on this stuff. And, if you don't want to come on, I understand. And they
Mhm.
never got back to me and they didn't come on. And it was like,
Wow.
I'm there. This is just, you've crossed the line and
Yeah.
it's worth pointing out. I'm not going to just act like it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So there are times where you do have to just take your gloves off and go, this is for the greater good. I don't care what happens to
Mhm.
me. You're a
Yeah.
moron.
Yeah.
We're all
Well, and I
dumber
think
now.
that's why they don't typically go on left-wing podcasts.
Right.
I think that's why they won't go on a show like Breaking Points because they know they're going to be asked tough questions. They're not going to pull any punches. Even though Crystal is a leftist, they've seen, I'm sure, her interviews.
People didn't
And
want me to have her on.
who
I
didn't?
had viewers. I had viewers who were like, "Oh, no, 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 no. She's not left enough. Why are you having her on? She's too
What?
centrist." And I said, "Okay,
She's
if
more left
you,"
than I am. Like I believe in the death penalty.
I
Like
said,
I'm a gun owner. Like
"Okay, no," but I said, if you believe that, then you have to watch this
yeah,
because you can't shut them out because I hate to tell you this, but they're on our team. They just are. And if
yeah.
you want to change them, ask questions or tell me what I should be talking about, what I should be asking about. Let's use this opportunity to get through where you think
But
or also stay open-minded. And I really people are like, I'm so glad I paid attention. I see this in an all new way.
see, that goes back to my point that I was making that people will see one little clip that someone pulls out of maybe an hour-long show, 2-hour show. They'll take one little snippet that someone says of something they don't agree with, and
Right.
they just make it into this huge overblown thing of, oh, see, this person must be on the right, this person must be a secret Trump supporter. It's like, no, people are not cookie cutter, people are not, you can't fit them all neatly into a box. And especially with people like Crystal or even with Sagar on the right. I mean, if someone says something that doesn't align with what you think is a leftist or you think is someone on the right, it doesn't mean they're switching sides. It means that they're open-minded. It means that they're honest. People nowadays tend to take honesty and being open-minded, being fair and fair-minded. They take that as, oh, well, you're a traitor. You
Right.
must be moving over to the other side. You must be pulling a Reuben, the phrase now that's used because of Dave
Yeah.
Rubin,
But I got news for people. If you're going to a protest right now, or like a rally, it can't be for one thing. It's for everything all the time. And there's going
Hmm.
to be people out there who are railing against the same people as you for completely different reasons
Hmm.
with completely different views.
Yeah.
That's your team.
There's
That's your
even people who
side.
voted for Trump that are going to some of these
That's
protests.
true. There are,
Yeah.
especially in South Carolina. There can't not be. I guarantee it. Like I went to one and I was pleasantly surprised to see so many people there. And my very next thought was, these can't all be Democrats. These can't
Yeah.
all be liberals. These can't all be
Yeah.
progressives. I do think a lot of them were, but that can't. it can't be the case. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't
I
know
mean,
what the percentage is, but
you have to be
be
able to have
realistic.
a nuanced view of things. I mean, I'm sure there's some
Yeah.
people that might see part of, you know, what we've discussed about Nancy Pelosi and the insider trading and go, "Oh, you're not a true leftist. You're not a true Democrat." I guarantee I will get comments like that. I don't care. I don't care because I'm going to be honest and that's it because if I have to be able to respect someone to associate with them and to watch their show. And that's what I would hope of my audience is that even when you disagree with me, you will respect me for at least being honest
Oh
and
yeah, and
and
you've
saying
got
what I really think and not trying to manipulate you, you know, into liking me or clicking on the like button or subscribing just because I'm pandering to what you want me to say.
and you've got the track record for it now, so you don't have to be worried about that. But I
Yeah,
wish
I
I
mean
could
I
talk about this all day. I
yeah,
really do.
I
This
know.
is good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and you know, I saw the meltdown with TYT too, you know, with the Young Turks,
Oh yeah.
with people freaking out. And, you know, yeah, there are things that I disagree with. And I think that Anna has gotten a little off track, you know, because of some things that have happened to her and some of the backlash that she got. Um,
Do you want to know what I think about that?
yeah,
I think that first of all, I think that a lot of Cenk and Anna's rhetoric is anti-activist. I think they take what appears to be a nuanced perspective and just ends up being anti-activist. And I wish they would recognize that if it's not intentional.
hmm,
I don't know if it is. I'm not in their head, but I think that when you spend so much time speaking truth to power, that's I learned that phrase from them
hmm,
that you can become popular enough for doing so that you are now the truth or the power that needs truth spoken to. And if you fail to
yeah,
recognize that, you've really got to take a step back
yeah,
and you have to refresh why you're doing what you're doing because
yeah,
there's no way that any one of us can be the authority on everything and
hmm,
keep saying you guys, I always tell you this. You always tell me, what are you, some sort of political guru or something? Well, should we be checking you in before we inform ourselves or come up with our own opinions and thoughts? So I
hmm,
really do think like they just got to a point where they were too big. And you'll see this with streamers who get to a certain subscriber count and they start doing just videos. And
hmm,
I get that because you don't want to fall victim to audience capture. You
hmm,
don't want to be on air for so long that you start, like we were saying, segueing into all kinds of different avenues and then it's like, what are we talking about?
yeah,
So I think with the main show at the Young Turks, and you'll see even their own hosts are railing against the same things that people
yeah,
rail against them for that they have lost the plot to a degree, but I will say that there are like one of my more popular videos was coming after them for being anti-trans
mm,
and saying some anti-trans rhetoric and activism. And um but there are accounts out there who are building careers on this and whose
yeah,
bank accounts are looking pretty good because they have monetized the rage. There
yeah,
has to be a point where your content, because now you're as locked in as you're blaming them for being locked in on any given issue, you
right,
have to find a way to shift it into something that benefits people as a whole, or else you're just a rage machine. And
yeah,
honestly, the stuff they did, while you can rail against it endlessly, do you have to? Because I mean, look at their numbers.
mm,
They took a hit and they're
yeah,
taking a hit. I think the damage is done. And so when, like you said, when people just get outraged, we can measure whether or not that's appropriate and or should be capped at a point, like I was saying. But like, um, how is it necessary at all? Probably to a degree, but as a viewer, just change the channel. If
yeah,
you don't like it,
yeah,
turn it off.
yeah.
Watch something else.
Yeah,
Stop
that's what I
supporting
did. I
them.
mean, I don't watch their show anymore. I
There's so many
unsubscribed.
options out there.
You know, and it's not to say I don't agree with it's not like, oh my God, everything they say is horrible and I disagree. You know, there were just certain things that, yeah, I was like, oh, that's not a good take. That's not a good way to think about things. And they just seem to be trying too much. They kind of like fell into the trap that I was saying Democratic establishment falls into, of trying to tack too much to the right
Right. Yeah.
to, to try to win people over. It's like, no, stand in your power, stand in your position and bring them to you. Stop trying to move towards them. When you're moving towards someone, you're not in control. They are. You're chasing them.
Right.
So if the Young Turks really was like, hey, we know how powerful we are. We know who we are, what we stand for. Then try to lure the right to you, not pandering to them
In
and
theory,
chasing after them.
in theory, they had always done that and they were
Yeah,
successful at that. I mean, I
yeah.
think that's true, but there are so many other people a part of that network that I keep trying to have them on the show so I can at least say, how does it feel to be one of the few reasons to keep watching the Young Turks, right? Because the popular opinion is that no, there's a lot of people on there who are very good at what they do. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
actual progressives on there. And so I
Mm-hmm.
feel like having like John Iadarola on so I can just say like, John, how does it feel to be one of the reasons people still watch TYT? Because that is what
Yeah,
they're saying.
yeah.
Like how do you feel about that? And does that open it up? But like, it is refreshing to see that the hosts take a stand and that they've had falling outs with other hosts like
Mm-hmm.
Francesca Fiorentini.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't go well. That and
Yeah.
they were very petty about that and did it all on
Yeah,
air.
that's what
That's
really
weird.
turned me off, was the pettiness,
Yeah, it's
especially on
avoidable.
Anna's side. I saw something with her saying, "Oh, well, no one ever pays attention to what Francesca has to say anyway,
Right,
or
right.
whatever." And it's like, you don't really have to go to that level. I mean, they used to be friends, and it's like you can
When
disagree
right,
on the way you're speaking on different topics. And I'm not even saying that Francesca is right on everything. Because I think, like on the trans topic, I think we need to have more nuanced conversations about it. I
but there
think,
are facts that they just leave out or run with that are just
yeah,
not
I mean,
appropriate. Like they
yeah.
reference studies and spin it in the favor of their argument, but
Hmm.
it's the idea for me, it's the idea that Cenk Uygur treats things, politics, like a pendulum, where if you fight for your rights, it swings one way. But don't worry, or don't get too comfortable. It's going to swing back, and you'll lose those rights if you keep pushing. And I'm like, I don't understand why we can't push for everyone to have equal rights.
Yeah.
You're saying some people don't deserve the same rights as you or me? I don't get that. So,
Yeah.
like, pushing for policy is one thing, but when it comes to people's basic rights as a human being and like a citizen of
Hmm.
this country, like we should all have like the same equity and or equity at all and
Yeah.
like the same starting point. But
Yeah.
I'm not sure he agrees with that, but I do like when people on
Yeah.
his team go up against him.
I kind of, I understood, and I'll be honest, like during the biggest meltdown over the whole trans thing, I wasn't watching their show, so I don't know everything that they've said. So I just want to say that up front to, be clear. I there could be really horrific things that they've said, or studies they've shown. But, I did understand their initial point, which I think came out, you know, 2 years ago, of like, if you make that the main focus of the Democratic Party, then you are going to lose people who are not on board, just as people, decades ago, gay marriage was
Like
like
just
a,
making
a
something a
taboo
one
topic.
issue party or campaign. Yeah, I do. So
Yeah, I
I
mean,
I don't know
well,
because
when you narrow in so much on one group, and I'll give you an
right.
example, um, who you probably know, Professor Scott Galloway.
I don't know. Not
Okay,
or I'm
he
not
he's
remembering.
um he's a leftist. He is a professor in New York, and he's been on a ton of different podcasts. He's been on Breaking Points, I think. Um, anyway, he's done a lot of research on men and what's going on with men, why so many of them are struggling to like launch in life, and why the manosphere has gotten so big and sucked them in, what's going
Yeah.
on in our culture that's allowed for this or created this. And he made this point that if you looked at, I think it was Kamala Harris's website when she was running for president, she had a section that said who we're for. And it listed like LGBTQ, women, all these different groups, Muslims, Jewish people, blah, blah, The one group that it didn't mention was men. It didn't say, young men. And so when you narrow your focus, because politics is a game of addition, you want to be as broad as possible. You want to appeal to as many people as possible. So
But
if you're
speaking as a man, we've had our
mhm.
time. We should be fine. We should be able to roll with it. I
no
mean,
i
I think we've reigned long enough, but
no
I
I
do
get what you're
I
saying as far
there
as
needs
like
to be
having
more.
power. I'm saying economically speaking, like not addressing our current economic situation, that
Yeah, I don't see why you
things
would leave anybody out.
well, I think
That's silly.
the fact that everything is so expensive now, that wages have not kept up with inflation, that
Oh yeah.
housing prices have skyrocketed, that
Profits go up.
inflation,
Yeah.
yeah, it is up. you know I mean, there are a lot of factors weighing on younger people. I mean, they grew up at a time when you had the mortgage meltdown, you had COVID, you had, I mean, there's just been a lot of downward pressure to where kids now, especially coming out of college with 40, $50,000 in debt, and then they're thrust into making minimum wage, working, at a fast food restaurant where they're never going to be able to get ahead and pay off this debt. And they're never going to be able to go out and buy a house. And, men, I'm sure more than I do, you want to feel that you're going to be able to take care of a family. You're going to, you want to be able to be financially secure so that you can take care of your wife and your kids and put a roof over their head and, provide for them. So, what we're seeing is a lot of young men pulling back, just receding from life because they feel like I can't get ahead. I'm never going to have a wife. I'm never going to have kids because I can't afford it. I'm never going to be able to buy a house. And so they, get online, and then you've got the Andrew Tates of the world out there telling them, oh, see, this is why your life sucks. It's because of this group and that group and the trans people and, Hispanic people taking your jobs and, pushing down wages and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And so
I mean, I
it's an easy out, it's an easy way, it's an easy scapegoat for them
I
to
am
go,
married and I provide, but I still would allow somebody to challenge the idea of marriage and whether or not that's the perfect path that everyone should be on. And this is
oh
how you
yeah,
do it. This is the
but I
American
mean,
way.
even
But
having a girlfriend, right, even being able to
yeah,
live
I
out on your
think,
own, like you don't want to be bringing your girlfriend back to mommy and daddy's house, right? So
well, but
you
this is why I think we should promote a society that is all inclusive in the way that it allows people to choose the path in life that they want to be on without thinking like it has to be one way or another.
well, absolutely, but people still need to be able to afford to put gas in their car, to be able
Yeah,
to
I mean, let's
put a
do
roof over their heads.
universal basic income and healthcare, and let's
Yeah,
give people like the proper starting point. I totally
absolutely.
agree.
But when
Yeah.
the Democrats won't do that, when they won't
Nobody
fight for
will.
that,
Yeah, it
and
sucks.
then you've got people like Andrew Tate of the world and
That's how
podcasters
you,
telling
yeah,
you
it's exploiting what people are. That's when I say like the
it's
Republicans and the
exploiting their
right.
pain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and building, and like when people say, "Oh, Trump is a genius because look at how he exploited people's fears and anxieties." And I'm like,
Hmm.
I don't think that's genius so much as it is
No, it's
a
evil.
charlatan's way of seeing how to like slip through the cracks in the system and how to exploit people and how to build on fears instead of
Right.
actually providing solutions. But you're right, the Democrats aren't doing it either, and that allows for the podcast sphere
Hmm.
to say, oh, poor guy, that you should have a girlfriend, darn it,
Yeah.
and it's women that are the problem. And
Right.
yeah, it's crazy. I
Yeah.
don't like
They
it at
give
all.
them
Yeah,
the foil. They
right.
present them with
It's like a cult.
a person or a group of people to point to for why they don't have everything that they want in their
It's
life,
like cult
when in
tactics.
reality
Yeah.
it's the system, and it is money in politics, and it is greed and systemic failures within our government and our country. So I think that's how they've lured a lot of young men over to their side.
I think like militancy when it comes to labor rights, yeah, that kind of thing. I think when it comes to never giving a congressperson or an elected official on any level of government a pass, yes, there are some things to be staunchly opposed to, for sure. But the rest of the time, like how we get there and how we unite in order to get to like those moments need to be as compromised, definitely, but also not without understanding.
Hmm.
And I think that punching down is bad. And
Yeah.
I think that asking some people to set their rights aside so that we can get to another place is unnecessary. I think that we can walk and chew gum, as they say. I think that we can fight on all fronts. And I think that, you don't hire or you don't elect politicians to act as one um one facet of society. You elect politicians with diversity so that they're
Hmm.
fighting, so that they can represent all the different battles that are going on at one time. And
Hmm.
that's how it needs to be. And so therefore you wouldn't have these arguments that, oh, we're going to lose rights if we fight too hard for this. No, there should be a whole committee just focused on that. There should be a whole what do you call it? Like when you have oh, I forget the phrase, but when you're like, oops, emergency, we need all hands on deck over here. Okay, that's all right, because it's not going to take away from the rest of what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
Like we should be able to have a government that does that versus, well, in 4 years they're going to undo this anyway. So why
Hmm.
really bother? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, um, anyway, yeah,
I,
I
I,
think
I
there's a
think,
lot.
yeah, I think one of the
Task
issues,
force. That's what I was looking for. Task force. Every
yeah.
now and then, when an issue arises, who's our task force? Who's going to handle this in
Hmm.
the moment? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, you got it. Everyone, go back to what you're
Yeah.
doing.
I think the issue comes in where the Democrats, because they don't want to upset their wealthy donors either, just like the Republicans, they don't want to push for true populist economic issues. They don't want to push for like a UBI, or for increasing the
Right.
child credits, or you know universal income, or a excuse me, universal health care, things like that. And so what they'll do instead, they put the window dressing on, just like Donald Trump, and they'll, oh, but see, we're for rights for this group, and we're for rights for that group. It's all, they cover up their lack with, you know look at how diverse and inclusive we are. It's like that meme of, oh, gee, they dropped a bomb on, these civilians, but at least it was a member of the LGBTQ community that did it, or something. I forget what that
Yeah.
meme is, but that's what the right thinks of the left, is that Like you're okay with bad things happening as long as it's done by someone who's in one of your in groups. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Not
it's
cool.
like the
Right.
corporations who like they're handing out just as much money to Donald Trump and the right as they do to the left, but because they, put up a BLM flag on their website, everybody thinks that they're
Yeah.
leftists.
I always say the greatest virtue signaling is virtue signaling your virtue signaling, right?
Right.
Like if I am accused of virtue signaling because I'm standing up for somebody, okay, whatever. But if I'm always talking about how virtuous I am,
Mm-hmm.
that's actually virtue signaling, right? If I'm
Yeah.
always pointing out my good deeds and what I stand for, okay, where's your money going? Who are you
Right.
donating to? Who
Yeah.
are
It's a
you
matter
voting
of, is
for?
it genuine, or are you just putting on a show
Right.
to cover up
Exactly.
for the other
There's a lot of
stuff
that.
that you're doing behind the scenes? And I think that's what people believe of the left, is that, yeah, they say they're for all these groups, and they are, for the most
Well,
part.
that's why I say,
But
who is the left? Like,
right,
that's why I wouldn't even say the Democratic Party is the
yeah.
left. Like,
But and that's the thing, is that if they were truly for these groups, like if they really believed Black Lives Matter, then they would want to lift people out of poverty, because by and
oh,
large, if you look statistically, it is more
yeah.
people of color who live in poverty.
That's
And
why I
so,
say if the media wants to focus on regretful voters, pick literally anybody. You don't have to just do regretful Trump voters because it feels good to go, we told you so. What an
yeah.
idiot you are. Like, there are people who have been suffering since day one in this country's existence, and the media they don't have enough time to cover all of that. But
Hmm.
they don't cover it at all as a result, which is silly. But you're right.
Yeah.
Look, I wish I could talk about this forever. I have to run,
Oh, wow.
unfortunately.
Yeah. I didn't even
But
realize what time it
this
is.
is I looked up like, wow, we have been going for a while and we could keep
Yep.
going for sure. This is
Yeah.
amazing. I don't have conversations like this where I could just sit here and go forever. At some point it fizzles, but it's not
Yeah.
fizzling. I really do appreciate it. This is and
Yeah. No,
not just for having me on, but for having the conversation.
yeah, this was good. Well, maybe we can do it on the new project.
I guarantee we will. There
Yeah.
will be plenty of time for that. Absolutely.
Yeah, this would be good.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right. And tell everybody where they can find you, social media, your show.
I am the letter hack just about everywhere. On Instagram, I'm friends of Strackbein. If you look up Matt Strackbein and the letter hack, you're bound to find me, but you could always just go to youtube.com/the letter hack. Except for the coming week, I am generally 5 days a week or more because of the members only content that I provide as well. So I'm on all the time everywhere under the name The Letter Hack, Primetime, and morning shows. So, look, I mean, come on. We're covering all the bases. You got no excuses. Please subscribe. Please share the content and follow because, like I said, not just promoting myself, I am a hub for all of online left media. I might not be a destination, but I am where you buy a ticket for the destination. So don't miss out.
Great. And remind everyone again, the new show is going to be
Go to thisspace.tv. That's thisspace.tv. Like, watch this space coming soon in this space. This space is where we operate in this space. Thisspace.tv.
okay,
June 10th.
perfect. And
Yeah,
June 10th.
that's the
And we're
date.
thinking around 2 p.m., but it could change. So I
It
I
could
will
be
definitely
way more.
update my
Yeah.
audience.
Great. Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah, I will promote it for you for sure.
That's awesome.
So thank you so much, Matt. I'm
Thank
sorry
you.
to keep you so long. I
No,
I know that you got
I'm enjoying
stuff
it.
and you're on the East Coast, so you're well into your day. For me, it's just,
It's
getting
okay.
off the ground.
But I do appreciate it. And like I said, I genuinely could sit here and talk to you all day. This is fantastic, Gina.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. This was fun. So we'll have to do it again.
Please.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.